Chapter 1460. Sizzle. He tossed the wok, and the ingredients in it flew into the air. Flames burst out of the wok, and with a rumble, the wok seemed to explode. Bufong grabbed the wok with one hand and knocked it against the stove, producing a clanging sound. Bufong was very good at tossing the wok now, and he could do it perfectly even with his eyes closed. Every time he tossed the wok, the dish would tumble up, glowing brilliantly and looking very beautiful. Steam rose from the wok. Bufong poured the dish into a blue and white porcelain plate, and it immediately surged with a strange power. In the Divine Dynasty, it was already very difficult for ordinary dishes to trigger the lightning punishment, so he was not surprised. After all, the capital of the Divine Dynasty was a great world, and the will of the great path of a great world was much stronger than that of small world. To trigger a lightning punishment, the dish of a Heaven Divine chef must be of very high quality. Perhaps a Heaven Divine chef's dish could trigger a lightning punishment. Summer once said that there were two Heaven Divine chefs in the Divine Dynasty. One of them was the Heaven Divine chef of the Imperial Kitchen, the personal Divine chef of the Divine Emperor. His status was noble and supreme. The other one, however, no longer existed. According to Summer's resentment when she said that it was most likely Mu Hongzi who went to the netherworld to be a landlord. That fellow was the previous host, and according to his strength, he was likely to be another Heaven Divine chef. However, according to Mu Hongzi's words, as a Heaven Divine chef, he was still at the level where he failed to break through to the God of Cooking realm. This meant that the God of Cooking described by the system should be stronger than a Heaven Divine chef. As for what realm that was, Bufong was curious. Then, he placed the first dish on the side. On the other side, he cleaned the black turtle constellation wok. Then, with a flick of his finger, he ignited the divine flame. The oil in the wok began to boil, rolling and emitting scorching heat. While the wok was being heated, Bufong began to prepare the ingredients. Tap, tap, tap. He cut the ingredients with a kitchen knife, his movements precise and unhurried. Sometimes, cooking was a baptism of the soul. Bufong was very intoxicated with the feeling of cooking. He took out a ladle. The ladle was flat. Now, the ladle was smeared with oil, and the rice milk was poured into the ladle. Then, the chopped ingredients were piled on top of the ladle, and a layer of rice milk was poured over the piled ingredients to wrap them. After he was done, he placed the ladle into the oil pan. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The moment it entered the wok of oil, it began to splash. Steam began to rise from the ingredients. With a shake of Bufong's hand, the oyster pancake immediately left the wok and floated in the wok, slowly boiling in the oil. Bufong was already very familiar with making oyster pancakes. However, as his cultivation level increased, his oyster pancake production also became more profound. Of course, this was because of the ingredients, which caused the oyster pancake's grade to continuously rise. Back then, it was only a very simple dish. But now, it was comparable to a divine dish. Just one mouthful was enough to increase the recovery of one's spiritual sense and energy very quickly. Looking at the oyster pancakes floating in the wok, Bufong suddenly fell into silence. His eyes lit up, and he thought of another dish. This dish had the same effect as the oyster pancake, but it was different. Bufong considered cooking this dish after he finished making the oyster pancake. After draining the oil, Bufong fished out the oyster pancake. Bufong began to busy himself. Buddha jumps over the wall soup, boiled fish, stonewalk fish, and other delicacies were all presented by Bufong at a moderate pace. There was also the dry pot cabbage that had blown up the Mo family's house. This dish was ordered by Luo Sanyang. This woman, who liked excitement, after finishing the dishes ordered by the women outside, Bufong carried the dishes and walked outside. He lifted the curtain of the kitchen, and the ringing of the bell resounded continuously. In the restaurant, everyone's gaze shifted over. Bufong and Xiao Bai walked out of the kitchen with the dishes in their hands. Those noisy women were attracted by the aroma of the dishes in the air, which was too fragrant. Moreover, when they saw the colorful dishes in Bufong's hands, they were all pleasantly surprised. Apart from delicious food, those cold drinks and desserts were what attracted them the most. Even Luo Sanyang, who was staring at Nethery, was captivated. It was the first time she had seen such delicacies. Buddha jumps over the wall soup, stonewalk fish, boiled fish, here's the matcha ice cream and cream cake that you wanted. Here's your spicy crayfish. Be careful. Bu Fong distributed the dishes one by one. Luo Sanyang ordered the dry pot cabbage and the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She looked at Bu Fong, then opened the lid of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Instantly, a golden light diffused, and the rich aroma attracted her. This Luo Sanyang swallowed her saliva, and her appetite was greatly increased. She took a deep breath and began to dig in. Bu Fong was only a spirit divine chef, but the dishes he cooked tasted as good as those of earth divine chefs. Moreover, they all had their own characteristics, which made them much more fun and delicious than the rigid dishes of those earth divine chefs. Looking at her best friend next door, enjoying her ice cream, she felt a little longing. Bu Fong walked up to the woman with a bowl of oyster pancake in his hand. The woman was elegant, and her face looked ordinary, but no one could remember her at first glance. Bu Fong paused. He found the woman somewhat familiar. Summer? Bu Fong asked. However, the woman did not answer Bu Fong. Instead, she took the oyster pancake from Bu Fong's hand. She grabbed it with her slender hand, put it in her mouth, and bit it, ignoring the heat and the oil. With a crunch, the delicious taste spread and the rich aroma spread. The woman's eyes curved slightly, and the corners of her mouth curved upward. There was no doubt that this woman was Summer. However, Bu Fong did not expect her to come to dinner with a different face. Shaking his head, Bu Fong walked back to the kitchen. Mr. Bu, congratulations on your opening. Just as Bu Fong turned around, a burst of hearty laughter rang out. The young master strode in with a gentle smile on his face. Bu Fong turned and nodded at the young master. He and the young master had gotten to know each other through fighting. Have a seat. What would you like to eat? The menu is on the wall behind you, Bu Fong said, twitching the corner of his mouth. Haha, I came here to congratulate Mr. Bu on your opening, but now that the aroma has aroused my appetite, I'd like to taste your cooking. Young Lord Hulu took a deep breath and said. Then, he sat down and looked at the menu. Oh, what is this ice cream? It's what that woman eats. Bu Fong raised a hand and pointed at the woman in the distance, who was licking the ice cream with her tongue. She was a daughter of a prominent family in the Divine Dynasty's capital, a good friend of Luo Sanyang. It was said that she was the daughter of a high-ranking official. She was a lady from a prominent family, but the way she ate at the moment was a little creepy. The young master twitched the corner of his mouth when he saw her. It looks delicious. I'll have one fry. Also, Mr. Bu, recommend a dish to I so that I can have a good meal. After this meal, I will go into seclusion. I don't know how long it will take, but when I come out, I may already be a god, the young master said. Bu Fong nodded. He needed to have a good meal before going into seclusion. Bu Fong paused, then nodded. After thinking for a while, he went into the kitchen. Before long, he came out with an ice cream and a spicy blood lobster. One was ice cream, and the other was spicy blood lobster. The two delicacies seemed to conflict with each other. Eating the spicy blood lobster and then ice cream, that feeling was inexplicably a little strange. If Bu Fong wanted to have a good meal, he would let him have one. He wanted to feel the pleasure of ice and fire. Bu Fong grabbed a blood lobster and demonstrated how to eat it. The young master's eyes lit up, and he copied Bu Fong's method of peeling a blood lobster and shoving it into his mouth. The softness in his mouth made his pupils constrict. The hot spiciness exploded in his mouth, making him feel as if his whole body was on fire. It was a very refreshing feeling. He licked the ice cream. Then, he licked it with his tongue, which was so hot that it seemed to be burning. It was like an iceberg was pressing against his face. The feeling instantly suppressed the heat on his tongue. It was an unparalleled feeling. It made the young master shudder all over. That feeling, there were two words to describe it. It was exciting. It was as if a song about ice and fire was playing in his head. Watching the young master eat the spicy blood lobster and the ice cream, Bu Fong could not help but twitch the corner of his mouth. Suddenly, a background music emerged in his mind. Summer. Summer passed quietly, leaving a little secret in the bottom of my heart. I can't tell you. Bufong shook his head with a strange look on his face. What the hell? Have I been infected by Mu Hongzi? Bufong had a strange look on his face as he imagined the young master, holding the ice cream in one hand and the blood lobster in the other, swaying his hips to the music with an intoxicated look on his face. Bufong left. In the distance, Luo Sanyang beckoned at him. Bufong walked over. On the other side, Yu's eyes flashed as she stared at Bufong. Luo Sanyang rose to her feet. Her voluptuous figure was very attractive. She leaned close to Bufong's ear and breathed out, accompanied by the fragrance of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She panted softly and said, "Bufong, I want ice cream." When Luo Sanyang said that, her eyes drifted to Nethery and the corners of her mouth curved upward slightly. Yu was expressionless. Bufong gave her a strange look. "We're on the same side. Speak properly." Luo Sanyang was speechless. Bufong turned and went into the kitchen. A moment later, he came out with an ice cream and handed it to her. The atmosphere in the restaurant was a little hot. The scene attracted many customers in the mall. Filled with curiosity, they stepped into the restaurant. Then, he was attracted by the atmosphere of the restaurant. After ordering and eating the dishes, he couldn't help but be intoxicated by it. They accepted the source stone. The corners of Bufong's mouth curled up slightly. He was a little excited. He could finally open the restaurant again. Now, as long as the turnover reached a certain level, he could make a breakthrough. From then on, he would reach the peak of his life and be one step closer to his dream of becoming the god of cooking. Buzz, all of a sudden, the system's serious voice rang in Bufong's mind. It was a voice he hadn't heard for a long time. "Congratulations on completing the temporary task, host. The temporary task reward will now be issued. Please check and receive." Bufong's eyes lit up. The system's reward buzzed in his mind. At some point in time, 2 more divine power liquid drops had appeared on the god of cooking's menu, which was originally empty. The perfectly round divine power liquid droplet was spinning, giving off divine light. In addition, a familiar fruit emerged in Bufong's mind. A 7-colored fruit of law hovered in the air. A fruit of law, a familiar fruit of law. Just as Bufong was immersed in the thought of the reward, outside the restaurant, the customers who were watching curiously immediately panicked. A clanging sound rang out. Several figures slowly walked over. They blocked the entrance of the restaurant. A terrible aura filled the air. These experts were all clad in silver armor with the word silver printed on their chests. Their auras fluctuated violently. The surrounding customers fled in panic. The silver armor guards of the Imperial Guard. The silver armor guards are on official business. Unauthorized personnel, please leave now, the leading expert of the silver armor guards said coldly. His eyes were cold and merciless. As soon as his voice rang out, a commotion broke out in the restaurant. The expressions of Luo Sanyang and the others changed. The silver armor guards are here? Is the imperial concubine going against the divine emperor's order? Chapter 1461. The Silver Armor Guards? The expressions of all the people in the restaurant changed dramatically. They were the imperial guards of the palace, existences a level higher than the capital's guards, and yet they had come here themselves. The people present were all of high status, so they quickly figured out what was going on. There was no doubt that the Silver Armor Guards were the imperial concubine's men. Black armor, silver armor, and gold armor were the divine emperor's 3 imperial guards, and they were as strong as the heads of aristocratic families. Moreover, silver armor and the imperial concubine had a very close relationship. This made the crowd think of many things. What should Honorbu do now? Each of these silver armor guards was a mid-grade god, and their commander was a high-grade god. As the imperial guards of the palace, although they were not many in number, they were extremely strong. The top floor of the skyscraper was almost cleared, leaving only the silver armor guards to surround the restaurant. Although the skyscraper belonged to the Luo family, the silver armor guards did not care about it at all. They surrounded the restaurant and scrupulously. The young master rose from his seat, frowning. He had a good impression of Bu Fong now. Bu Fong was strong and could cook well. He was naturally happy to have such a friend. However, he also felt that the silver armor guards were being a little too aggressive. The divine emperor had given the order not to dwell on this matter, but the silver armor guards surrounded the restaurant at this moment. This showed that they did not take the divine emperor's order seriously. Tap, tap, tap. The commander of the silver-armored army slowly stepped into the restaurant. Clad in silver armor, he clasped his hands behind his back and exuded a strong, murderous aura. They were all veterans of hundreds of battles and had been tempered by blood, so their aura was much stronger than that of ordinary guards. "Can you give me some face? Mr. Bu is my young master's friend," Mr. Bu said. The young master licked the juice of the spicy blood lobster on his finger, stood up, and looked at the commander. The commander clasped his hands behind his back and turned to look at the young master with an indifferent expression. A hint of a smile came over his face. "Young master, are you going to stop the silver armor guards from doing something?" The commander said indifferently, his eyes cold. The young master froze for a moment. Then he furrowed his brows as if he was angry. "Lord Silver Armor ordered us to capture that chef and bring him back to the palace. This is not only Lord Silver Armor's order, but also the Imperial Concubine's order. Do you dare to go against the Imperial Concubine's order?" The commander looked down at the young master. He was a high-grade god. His aura was extremely strong. Even though the young master was a demigod, he was not afraid of him at all. The young master's face darkened. This was not giving him any face at all. Boom! The young master's aura surged, and the law of destruction floated above his head, exuding a terrifying aura. "The silver-armored army is really impressive," the young master sneered. Luo Sanyang also stood up with a serious expression. The Imperial Concubine was going to kill them all. It seemed that Mo Hen's position in the Imperial Concubine's heart was really important. Of course, the Imperial Concubine might just be trying to regain her lost face. "Don't force us to do it, my lord. The price is not something you can bear. Even King Pingyang may not be able to bear it." The silver-armored commander was still sneering. His sneer irritated the young master even more. In the restaurant, Bu Fong, who was checking the system's rewards, came to his senses with a flash in his eyes. He looked outside with a straight face. The noise outside had naturally attracted Bu Fong's attention. With his hands clasped behind his back, he walked out with an indifferent face. He saw the silver-armored army. There were a dozen mid-grade gods and one high-grade god. Their aura fluctuated as if enveloping the whole building in a mighty pressure. The silver-armored army had come with ill intentions. In the distance, the people from the Luo family had arrived. "My lady, the patriarch has asked you to return to the family," a member of the Luo family said to Luo Sanyang, glancing at the silver-armored army with fear. Luo Sanyang, on the other hand, bit her lip and glared at the newcomer. "Go back and tell my father that I, Luo Sanyang, am determined to get involved in this matter today," she said. The Luo family's faces flickered. "Oomph! How dare you?" The commander of the silver-armored army sneered, glanced at Luo Sanyang, and let out a loud shout. His terrible voice exploded like a thunderclap, lingering in the air and making everyone's eardrums feel as if they were about to burst. The pressure of a high-grade god enveloped the whole place. The commander of the silver-armored guard was much stronger than Mo Fong. He should have comprehended more than 50 laws as well. Such strength was indeed not something that Mo Fong and the others could compare with. The young master took a step forward, his face cold and indifferent. As for Luo Sanyang's best friends, they were all cowering in a corner in fear. They did not have the confidence to act presumptuously in the face of the silver-armored army. The young master and Luo Sanyang had extraordinary identities. The former was the young master of King Pingyang's mansion, and the latter was the daughter of the Luo family. Their identities were more distinguished than theirs. They did not have the confidence to fight against the silver-armored army. In that case, don't blame me for being rude. His Excellency Silver Armor has said that anyone who disobeys will be killed without mercy. Rumble. As soon as the commander's voice rang out, his aura suddenly exploded out. His eyes seemed to burst into silver light. In a flash, he attacked. His aura was as strong as a dragon's. However, just as he was about to make his move, a faint voice rang out from the restaurant. I dare you to make a move here. Bufong's thin figure slowly walked out of the restaurant, his hands clasped behind his back, his face indifferent. The commander's pupils constricted. Bufong is the man I've been looking for. I've finally found you. His Excellency Silver Armor has ordered me to arrest you and put you in prison. The commander's aura fluctuated. He took a step forward and appeared in front of Bufong as if he had teleported. Then he thrust out his palm toward Bufong like a dragon rising from the abyss. It was as if a thunderbolt had torn through the void. He actually attacked like a thunderbolt in the restaurant. Bufong's eyes narrowed, and the look in his eyes became much colder. Again and again and again and again, Bufong was a little angry. In particular, today was the opening day of his restaurant, and the imperial concubine had sent someone to make trouble. Rumble. Just as the commander of the silver-armored army made his move, a beam of silver light suddenly appeared. No one knew when Xiao Bai had appeared in front of Bufong. His fan-like palm slapped out and collided with the commander of the silver-armored army. Rumble. When the two palms collided, boundless shock waves burst out. A clanging sound rang out. Whitey took a step back, its mechanical eyes flashing with brilliance. The commander did not move at all, but a look of surprise appeared in his eyes. A puppet? How dare a mere puppet stop me? The commander flew into a rage. Troublemaker, you will be stripped as an example to others. Xiao Bai's mechanical voice rang out, echoing through the entire place. Stripped as an example to others? Xiao Bai's words stunned everyone present. No one had expected Xiao Bai to say such a thing. Did this puppet know what he was talking about? That was a high-grade god, one who had comprehended 50 laws. A mere puppet could be blown to pieces in an instant. The surrounding silver-armored army members sneered. Stripped? They were afraid that it would be the puppet's iron skin that would be stripped later. The young master's expression was slightly strange. Looking at the insolent commander, Bufong frowned. Was he looking down on Xiao Bai? Although Xiao Bai's fighting prowess was not as good as that of a high-grade god. If he looked down on Xiao Bai because of this, he would probably suffer a fierce counterattack. Rumble. Xiao Bai moved. A flag fell from the sky and stabbed into the ground in the distance. The long spear appeared, and like a huge dragon, it charged forward with a loud bang. The commander of the silver-armored army unleashed his aura. With a rumble, it collided with Xiao Bai's attack. Xiao Bai staggered back a few steps. The power of a god spread in all directions, but it did not damage the restaurant. The restaurant was protected by the system, so it was not damaged. In the distance, the plain-looking woman, who was sitting in a chair and eating an oyster pancake elegantly, glanced at the restaurant in surprise. Surprisingly, such an attack didn't break the restaurant in the slightest. Interesting. The woman was not in a hurry to make a move. She wanted to see how Bufong would deal with it. System, can you bear this humiliation? Looking at Xiao Bai, Bufong asked the system in his mind. The system would not allow anyone to cause trouble in the restaurant. Of course, Bufong could suppress the disturbance. But since Xiao Bai had threatened to strip him, he would become a laughing stock if he failed. Xiao Bai had a connection with the system, and Bufong knew that. The system seemed to be silent. After a long time, a voice rang out. Considering the restaurant's reputation, the system will upgrade Xiao Bai's ability. It will take 1 minute to upgrade the ability. Please hold on for a minute, host. The system's serious voice rang out. Bufong froze. It was really coming? Could the system upgrade Xiao Bai's ability? Buzz, all of a sudden Xiao Bai, who was fighting, froze. He stood beside Bufong, not moving an inch. Yeah, it had started to upgrade. Bufong looked at Xiao Bai, then at the silver-armored guards. If he could hold on for a minute, Xiao Bai would clear his name. Boom! The commander of the silver-armored guards moved. He took a step forward, and his terrifying energy surged, dashing toward Xiao Bai. He wanted to smash that puppet. However, the puppet did not move. Bufang leaned to the side, standing in front of Xiao Bai. The black turtle constellation wok appeared in his hand, blocking in front of him. There was a loud thud. The black turtle constellation wok did not budge. The commander took a step back. Puffed. You still want to strip me? Nowadays, even puppets know how to talk big. The commander of the silver-armored guard sneered. This is Lord Silver Armor's order. If you resist, I'll break your legs and bring you back. Attention, all silver armor guards. Capture this audacious chef on the spot. His voice rang out like thunder. All the silver-armored guards moved. All the silver-armored army soldiers immediately moved. Clanging sounds rang out from their bodies. Clanging sounds rang out from the bodies of the silver-armor guards. They shot toward Bufang like bolts of silver lightning. In the blink of an eye, they surrounded him. More than a dozen silver-armor guards and a dozen mid-grade gods had attacked. Even Bufang felt a burst of pressure. The expressions of the young master and his wife flickered. Yu and Hades' era also looked unsightly. The capital of the divine dynasty is not friendly at all. However, Bufang did not care. He picked up the black turtle constellation wok. The look in Bufang's eyes became very deep. With a thought, he smashed the wok down. The wok smashed down hard, as if it had turned into thousands of wok in a flash. They collided with the silver armor guards. Divine power, wok-tossing spell of affliction. Bufang said lightly. Bam, bam, bam. One black wok after another flew out. Every member of the silver armor guard was so furious that their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. They felt a powerful force forcing them to kneel on the ground. A black wok floated above their heads. Rumble. More than a dozen silver armor guards dropped to their knees around Bufang. This scene was exceptionally spectacular, and it shocked everyone present. The commander's face turned unsightly. Bufang is indeed worthy of being the genius demigod who destroyed the Mo family. I can't believe he has suppressed all my men with just one move. But that's not enough. A cold smile came over the commander's face. Suddenly, the commander of the silver-armored guards moved. His figure streaked across the air, leaving numerous afterimages as he charged toward Bufang. The power of the law emerged over his head. 50 laws swayed, turned into ribbons, and fell from the sky. This caused the commander's aura to rise steadily. In a flash, it reached a very terrifying level. A terrible pressure spread from the top floor of the Luo family skyscraper in all directions. Buzz, attention host. Xiao Bai's ability has been upgraded, a serious voice rang out. As soon as the voice rang out, a huge palm the size of a cattail leaf fan blocked in front of Bufang, and the commander's attack smashed into the huge palm with a loud bang. It remained unmoved. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes glanced at the commander, and there seemed to be streams of light shooting out of them. All troublemakers will be stripped. Chapter 1462. All troublemakers will be stripped, Xiao Bai said, his mechanical eyes flashing. Even his voice seemed to have become a little stronger. Bufang took a step back, the corners of his mouth curling up slightly. 1 minute passed by so quickly, but, for some reason, Bufang could not wait to see Xiao Bai strip all the silver armor guards. The eyes of the people around him narrowed slightly. That iron puppet can still fight? Although it's strong, it's no match for a high-grade god. In the brief exchange just now, everyone could tell that the puppet's fighting prowess was about the level of a mid-grade god. It stood no chance against the commander of the silver armor guards. The young master's face was cold. The fact that the commander of the silver armor guards did not take him seriously at all made him very uncomfortable. Although he did not rely on his father, he still felt a little uncomfortable when he found that his father's name was not as useful as it used to be. Has King Pingyong really fallen from grace? Now that his father had fallen from grace, he, as his son, naturally wanted him to regain his glory. The young master's fighting spirit was burning in his heart. Luo Sanyang looked worriedly at Bufong. Although Bufong had used all his trump cards last time, he had only managed to kill Mo Fong, who had just become a high-grade god. Moreover, he had exhausted all his trump cards. The reason why a trump card was called a trump card was because it was an unexpected and rare method. If they could be used normally, they would not be called trump cards. What should Bufong do this time? Rely on that iron puppet? Impossible. How could that iron puppet be a match for a high-grade god? Strip him? The commander's eyes flashed as he stared at Xiao Bai. He felt a sense of pressure from White Yi's fan-like palm. He stared at Xiao Bai. Xiao Bai seemed to have changed a lot, but he did not care. He was just a puppet. What a shameless boast. I'm afraid your iron skin is itching for a beating. The commander sneered. The next moment, the power of law circulated. The terrifying power of the law crushed down, wanting to press Xiao Bai to the ground. Bufong took a few steps back and sat on the chair, watching with great interest. Yu and the others stood beside Bufong. They seemed to feel strange about Bufong's calmness. Bufong was very calm. Since the system said that it would improve Xiao Bai's ability, it definitely wouldn't lie. So, it was time for Xiao Bai to perform. Boom! Facing the oppressive laws of the Silver Armored Army's commander, Xiao Bai's eyes suddenly lit up, as if they were bursting out a brilliant light. Facing the pressure of the law, he punched out. With a loud bang, it directly ignored the suppression of the laws and smashed into the Silver Armor Guard's head. The soft feeling brought about by the contact between the steel fist and the flesh caused everyone present to shiver slightly. That punch, not light at all. Poochie. Blood splattered everywhere. The commander of the Silver Armor Guard didn't expect this to happen at all. His eyes widened as he was sent flying. His body spun 360 degrees before crashing heavily onto the ground. He didn't understand why his pressure of the law had no effect on Xiao Bai. He was a man with the power of 50 laws. Xiao Bai maintained his posture of punching. His eyes once again locked on the Silver Armor Guard, who had fallen to the ground. He took a step forward. A clanging sound rang out. After all, he was a high-grade god. How could he be knocked down so easily? The Silver Armor Guard stood up, opened his mouth, and was about to roar. The power of 50 laws was activated by him at the same time. Suddenly, it was as if thunder was pressing down, and the entire building trembled. Of course, because of the existence of the system, everything in the restaurant was brand new, and it wasn't affected at all. In the distance, the eyes of the woman eating the oyster pancake lit up slightly. She glanced at Xiao Bai in surprise. Immune to the law? Interesting, the woman murmured. Xiao Bai's figure disappeared like a flash of lightning. When it appeared again, the flag on its back was smashed down with a loud bang. The spear stabbed out, sending the commander flying. Die! The silver-armored commander hovered in the air. Law condensed on his hands as he fiercely slapped at Xiao Bai's head. With a bang, he hit Xiao Bai's head. However, the silver-armored commander's expression changed once more. His ferocious strike actually didn't smash White Yi's head into pieces. The moment his power of law bombarded Xiao Bai's body, it seemed to collapse. It was a very strange feeling. Could it be that the laws were useless against this puppet? That's impossible. Previously, his power of law was still able to suppress this puppet. Why did this puppet suddenly seem to be on steroids? Could it be that he had a fight with his physical body? The fleshly body of a high-grade god was not weak. However, the silver-armored commander specialized in nomological power. If he were to abandon nomological power and clash head-on with Xiao Bai, he would not be able to do so. He was completely going to be beaten up. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flickered. His fan-like palm slapped out. Like a huge net, it instantly locked down all the possible escape routes of the silver-armored army's commander. The commander felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. He seemed to feel that something was wrong. He raised his hand. However, his palm was forcibly pressed down by Xiao Bai. The fan-like palm slammed down, forcing him to kneel on the ground. Crack! The silver armor on his body made a cracking sound. Swish! Xiao Bai raised his palm all of a sudden. A clanging sound rang out. The next moment, his silver armor was ripped off, thrown away, and smashed to the ground. The commander of the Silver Armor Army felt a chill run down his spine. The fact that the silver armor on his arm was ripped off startled him a little. He had never encountered such a situation before. He couldn't even use the power of law. Without the power of law, could he still be considered God? Did he have to use his brutal physical strength to fight? His commander was actually pressed to the ground by a puppet. The mid-grade gods around him also widened their eyes. They had never thought that such a thing would happen. At this moment, the battle had completely exceeded their expectations. Immune to the power of law. Very naughty. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched slightly. He now understood why the system had improved Xiao Bai's ability. Without the power of law, the fighting strength of many gods plummeted. This improvement was not bad at all. Xiao Bai was fearless when it came to a physical collision. Swish! The commander of the Silver Armor Army felt a little desperate. The silver armor on his body was ripped off once again. The thin gown under the silver armor was revealed. How dare you? I'm the commander of the Silver Armor Army, under the Divine Emperor. The commander roared, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets. He couldn't accept this outcome. The mid-grade gods around him no longer stood by and watched. Instead, they all attacked, pressing toward Xiao Bai. A long spear appeared in his hand. It was a silver-long spear. The spear was like a dragon as it rushed towards Whitey. The power of law surged, turning their spears into a real silver dragon that tore through the air. Xiao Bai pressed down on the commander with one hand and swept the spear with the other, shattering the spears in the hands of the Silver Armor Army. Then he thrust out his palms. The pupils of one of the Silver Armor Army soldiers constricted instantly. He was slapped hard to the ground. A ripping sound rang out. The silver armor on his body was ripped off in an instant. The soldier howled in humiliation, rose to his feet, and tried to resist. However, Xiao Bai picked him up like a chicken and threw him out the door. The next moment, he flew through the air in an arc and fell outside. The same thing happened to all the Silver Armor Army soldiers. They could not resist at all as they were picked up like chickens and thrown out. One after another, they fell outside. The commander's eyes almost popped out of his sockets. How dare you? He turned to look at Bu Fang, who was sitting in a chair and looking at him playfully. You chef, how dare you openly resist the Silver Armor Army? You will be judged. The commander growled. The problem was that the power of the law had no effect on this puppet, which was almost invincible in physical combat. That was embarrassing, very annoying. Xiao Bai, strip them thoroughly, said Bu Fang. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed, and then his movements accelerated like a whirlwind. A ripping sound rang out. The last piece of silver armor on the Silver Armor Army soldier was ripped off. Under White E's large hands, the thin clothes on his body were as if they were nothing. With a simple swipe, he was completely naked. The naked commander of the Silver Armored Army felt a surge of shame and anger in his heart. He was the commander of the Silver Armor Army, and he had never been humiliated like this. He covered his private parts with both hands. The commander of the Silver Armored Army roared again. Unfortunately, Xiao Bai grabbed one of his legs and threw him out of the restaurant. With a thud, he fell with a group of Silver Armor Army soldiers outside. At this moment, the dignified Silver Armor Army soldiers were all stripped of their clothes. A group of naked people rolled on the ground in fear. A clothes-stripping puppet had scared off a squad of Silver Armor Army soldiers. This scene stunned everyone in the restaurant. In the distance, the eyes of Luo Sanyang's friends were already shining. They stared at the mighty Whitey with stars in their eyes. That was worship. Xiao Bai, who was good at stripping people, was mighty and majestic, which made them inexplicably excited. He narrowed her eyes. Xiao Bai was still Xiao Bai, the clothes-stripping maniac. Nether King Erhai sat on the ground, looking as if he had lost his soul. Once upon a time, he was an existence who could compete with the clothes-stripping maniac. When Hades used his clothes-stripping finger, no one could resist it. But now, he had been flung away by the clothes-stripping maniac. As the saying went, the new generation surpassed the old. He, Hades' era, had been slapped to death by the clothes-stripping Xiao Bai on the beach, There was an inexplicable sense of melancholy in his heart. He could no longer slack off. He had to cultivate hard and strive to break through to the god realm. He wanted to restore the glory that once belonged to Hades. Hades' clothes-stripping finger must appear in the world again. Luo Sanyang and the young master were dumbfounded. So ferocious, so explosive, and so cool. The Silver Armor Army, who had been arrogant a moment ago, was now in a sorry state like a stray dog. The young master felt a sense of comfort spreading from his feet to his whole body in an instant. I dare you to be arrogant again? System, what ability did you improve Xiao by? Bufang could not help but ask the system in his mind. In the restaurant under the jurisdiction of the system, I will carry out a comprehensive reform of Xiao Bai's foundation. Xiao Bai's overall parameters will be greatly improved, and he will be immune to the loss. The system's serious voice rang out. If his overall parameters were greatly improved, wouldn't his combat strength be greatly improved? In addition, he would be immune to the loss. In other words, in the restaurant, even a perfected god could only fight with Xiao Bai in close combat. This improvement was indeed terrifying. The clothes-stripping, crazy demon had finally returned. A faint smile emerged at the corner of Bu Fang's mouth. Unless a god king came to the restaurant to cause trouble. However, how could a god king be so free as to cause trouble in the restaurant? Rumble. As soon as this thought appeared in Bu Fang's mind, a terrifying pressure abruptly approached. It completely enveloped the whole building. The expressions of everyone present changed dramatically. The woman, who was eating an oyster pancake, frowned and glanced outside the door. There was a clear sound of footsteps coming from that direction, one after another. Tap, tap, tap. The clear footsteps seemed to come from the 9 nether realms. A man clad in silver armor appeared. He was tall and slender, and the silver armor made him look even taller. At his waist was a long, slender sword. Sword light swirled around the blade. I didn't believe the imperial concubine when she said you were a bold chef. Now, it seems that you live up to your reputation. You do have a lot of guts. His faint voice rang out. Then, a chill enveloped the restaurant in an instant. Behind the silver armor, a sharp gaze shot out. The power of a god king spread completely. The divine emperor's imperial guard. Silver armor. The expressions of Luo Sanyang, the young master, and the others flickered. Chapter 1463. Silver Armor. Everyone's expression changed. The silver armor guards outside put on their clothes. Unfortunately, their clothes were disheveled, but their faces were filled with fanaticism. Silver armor was the military soul of the silver-armored army and their spiritual pillar. This restaurant is finished. That chef is dead. Now that silver armor has appeared, he can't escape. Silver armor was one of the 3 imperial guards of His Majesty. His cultivation base was as high as the heavens, and he was as famous as black armor and gold armor. He was in charge of the 3,000 silver armor guards in the palace, and his strength had suppressed countless people in the Divine Dynasty's capital. This was Silver Armor. Silver Armor's voice was very lazy, but it was sharp and cold. Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed. The next moment, his figure flickered, and he charged towards Silver Armor. Xiao Bai, who was immune to the laws, was very confident now. The silver armor guards behind Silver Armor, who had been stripped naked, showed a look of ridicule. This puppet really didn't know how to live. How dare he attack His Excellency, Silver Armor? This iron puppet would soon be smashed into an iron ball. Although they were stripped naked by Xiao Bai, Silver Armor was much stronger than them. The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched. Was it really a God King expert? This Silver Armor should be the same as Black Armor. His strength must be extremely formidable. Just from the aura emanating from Silver Armor's body, Bu Fang understood the latter's strength. It was a terrible scene that seemed to cause the surrounding void to shatter. Compared to the head of the Mo family, Silver Armor seemed to be stronger. Silver Armor glanced lazily at Xiao Bai, who was charging toward him. This puppet was very interesting. He was immune to the loss. He had stripped all of his subordinates' clothes. Interesting. The corner of Silver Armor's mouth curved upward slightly. The next moment, he raised a finger. This puppet was not bad, but in his eyes, it was no different from an ant. This time, he had attacked only to fulfill the imperial concubine's order and bring Bu Fong back. If Bu Fong resisted, he would kill him and bring him back. It could be considered a gift to the imperial concubine. At the thought of the imperial concubine, Silver Armor's eyes became much gentler. Boom! The power of law surged above Silver Armor's raised finger. That law was incomparably terrifying, like a ball of resplendent silver light. In the blink of an eye, it had swallowed Xiao Bai. Huh! Silver Armor soon let out a soft exclamation of surprise, because he realized that after the silver light splashed, Xiao Bai's figure actually dashed out of the silver light and punched at Silver Armor. Silver Armor was slightly taken aback by what he saw. He really was immune to laws. It could even be immune to the laws of a god king like him. However, a god king expert was a god king after all. His figure disappeared on the spot, as if he had teleported. Boom! Xiao Bai threw several punches in a row. His speed was extremely fast as he tried to suppress Silver Armor. However, a God King realm powerhouse's physical strength was naturally extremely strong. After exchanging several punches with Xiao Bai took a step back. In the distance, Bu Fong stood up, his expression much more serious. Silver Armor's strength was very formidable. Even after the system upgrade, Xiao Bai, who was immune to laws within the range of the restaurant and whose parameters had been comprehensively improved, still could not do anything to him. Bu Fong felt that he had to think of something. This puppet is very interesting. I could take it back and study it. If I can figure out a way to be immune to laws, the Silver Armor Guards will surely become the strongest army in the Xiai Divine Dynasty. Silver Armor stared at Xiao Bai, his eyes bursting with bright light. It was a look of pleasant surprise. Be a good boy and surrender. Was the ability to be immune to laws strong? Without a doubt, it was very strong. Laws were the foundation of a god. Without laws, a god would be as weak as a tiger that had lost its claws and teeth. If he could figure out the principle and master the ability to be immune to laws, his fighting prowess would probably improve exponentially, and he might even be able to face a god emperor head-on. He should not be afraid of a god emperor who did not have the power of laws. At that time, he could even become the strongest existence in the entire Divine Dynasty. At the thought of this, Silver Armor became more and more excited. Boom! Silver Armor unleashed the aura in his body even more unscrupulously. This aura was extremely terrifying, and it caused the void to tremble and crack. The terrifying power seemed to be able to crush everything. Luo Sanyang and the others felt their breathing quicken under the pressure. It was extremely unbearable. Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. However, Bu Fong suddenly froze. He turned his head and saw the ordinary-looking woman who was stuffing the last piece of the oyster pancake into her mouth. The woman's aura suddenly changed. An aura that was not weaker than Silver Armor's soared into the sky. It actually forcibly suppressed Silver Armor's aura. Silver Armor's expression changed abruptly. He looked over abruptly. At this moment, the ordinary-looking woman's face had undergone a tremendous change. That ordinary face was no longer ordinary, for it was no longer possible to make out her appearance. All that could be seen was a blur. Sure enough, it's her, the Deputy Palace Lord of the Divine Chef Temple. Summer, the Princess of the Xiai Divine Dynasty. It's you, Silver Armor, of course, sensed Summer's aura, and his expression changed abruptly. He had been here for so long, but he didn't realize that Summer was in this restaurant. She was dressed in a long, curly red dress, and her long hair fluttered in the wind. The corners of her big red lips curved upward into a sarcastic smile. Silver Armor, she said. Silver Armor's body tensed. Then he chuckled and said, I didn't expect your excellency to be in this restaurant. Please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. Get lost, Summer said indifferently. She said the word get lost very gently. However, As soon as she said that, Silver Armor's face froze. All the people present were slightly taken aback. Everyone sucked in a deep breath. She actually told Silver Armor to get lost. Who is this woman? The young master stared at the woman with wide eyes. He gulped down a mouthful of saliva. The princess of the divine dynasty? Isn't she the princess who was extremely powerful and talented in the past? Even my father is a little frightened when he talks about her. Why is this woman in Mr. Boo's restaurant? Your Excellency, the imperial concubine has ordered us to capture this chef. Don't make it difficult for me, Silver Armor said indifferently. He was indeed a little afraid of Summer. He was indeed a little wary of Summer. She was a god king with monstrous talent and terrifying strength. Moreover, she was a god king who had comprehended the supreme law of the universe. The law of space was elusive, and he had no confidence that he could defeat her. The imperial concubine? That bitch? Summer raised her head slightly and said lightly. As soon as she said that, all the people present sucked in a cold breath. How dare she call the imperial concubine a bitch? She's indeed the princess. Silver Armor's expression changed abruptly, and a fierce light burst out of his eyes. Your Excellency, I respect you, but don't push your luck. Her Excellency is not to be insulted, he said coldly. Silver Armor said coldly, his aura fluctuating. The imperial concubine would always be a piece of pure land in his heart, an existence that was not allowed to be polluted. Summer sneered. The imperial concubine can't be insulted? Are you the divine emperor's Silver Armor or the imperial concubines? Summer said coldly. The surrounding people kept quiet out of fear. They were not qualified to interrupt a conversation of this level. How could ordinary people dare to talk about the imperial concubine? That was a capital offense, punishable by death. Only Summer, as the deputy palace lord of the divine chef temple and a princess, dared to talk like that. Silver Armor's face was livid. Although he was wearing a mask and no one could see his expression, everyone knew that he did not look good at this moment. I am naturally His Excellency Divine Emperor's Silver Armor, and I will always serve His Excellency Divine Emperor, Silver Armor said. His tone was so cold that it seemed to shoot out from the gaps between his teeth. I can't tell. Why do I feel that you are that bitch's lackey? Summer shook her head. Her tone was still so bitter and mean. Your Excellency, if you continue to insult the imperial concubine like this, I won't be polite anymore. Oh, are you angry from embarrassment? I don't know what's wrong with the divine emperor, but you must remember, in the Xiai divine dynasty, you will always be His Excellency's subordinate. You must remember your identity. Xiaji said. Every word was like a sharp sword that pierced Silver Armor's chest. Silver Armor's breathing became rapid. Your Excellency, I don't need you to remind me of these words. I understand, but no matter what, I have to take this chef with me. Silver Armor's aura began to spread. The whole skyscraper, and even the whole divine dynasty, was enveloped in this terrible aura. The Luo family skyscraper was shaking violently. Around the skyscraper, in the void, there were many figures hidden in the void. Their gazes were incomparably sharp as they stared at the top floor of the skyscraper, at the battle. The fight between Silver Armor, the Divine Emperor's Imperial Guard, and the princess, it was very eye-catching. Take the chef with you? Have you forgotten the Divine Emperor's order? You're not allowed to attack the Divine Chef Temple? Summer's red dress fluttered as she walked slowly in the void. Silver Armor's pupils constricted. I dare not forget the Divine Emperor's order, but, Your Excellency, this chef is outside the Divine Chef Temple now, so I don't think the Divine Chef Temple can do anything about him. Silver Armor said coldly. The Divine Chef Temple can't do anything about him? The corner of Summer's mouth twitched slightly. The next moment, she turned her eyes and rested them on Bufong. Little Boo, show your sign. Summer's red lips parted slightly. As soon as she said that, everyone was slightly taken aback. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. Show my sign? Why does that sound so strange? Show my sign? The people around him were also slightly taken aback. Many people were stunned as well. They wondered what Summer was up to. Bufong felt a little helpless. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, he could only show his sign. With a thought in his mind, he took out a token from the system's storage space. He held it in his hand. Then Bufong grabbed the token and waved it in the air. His movement was not big. However, everyone's eyes were attracted by the token in Bufong's hand. Whether it was silver armor, the young master, or Luo Sanyang, even the group of people watching the fight outside sucked in a cold breath at this moment. The shock in everyone's heart seemed to be about to explode. Is this the token of the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple? When did this chef become the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple? Everyone was dumbfounded. Chapter 1464. The Lord of the Divine Chef Temple? Good heavens! How could this little chef be the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple? The people present were a little confused. Whether they were Bufong's enemies or Bufong's acquaintances, they all had a dull look on their faces. Except, of course, for Summer, the woman shrouded in a haze. The woman's red lips curved upward, as if she was satisfied with these people's attitudes. What she needed was this shock to shock these people about Bufong's identity. Rumble. Silver Armor's aura fluctuated, exuding a terrible power. His eyes burst into silver light, and his gaze, like a sharp sword, shot toward Bufong. How could he be the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple? Where's that guy? Silver Armor's voice was deep, almost growling. Bufong raised the token and waved it around. This token was made of a strange material, and it felt very good in his hand. It was as cold as ice, yet it was as warm as volcanic rock. Mental strength poured into the token. Through the token, the mental strength would become very stable. He could feel that his mental power was increasing steadily. Rumble. Bufong could feel Silver Armor's anger, which puzzled Bufong. Could it be that, as the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple, I'm in the way of this guy? Summer floated down and landed in front of Bufong, blocking Bufong from Silver Armor's aura. Where's that guy? Did he run away like a coward? That damn guy. Silver Armor was furious, and his aura seemed to be on the verge of overflowing. His aura turned into a dazzling silver light, and the aura of a god king exploded out. Over his head, the power of law turned into a wheel of law, spinning as if causing the void to be destroyed. This was the power of a god king. It was the top fighting force of a divine dynasty. I don't know where that guy went, but there's no doubt that Bufong is now the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple. So Bufong represents the Divine Chef Temple. If you capture Bufong, you will be going against the Divine Chef Temple, which is against the Divine Emperor's order. Are you going to go against the Divine Emperor's order? Do you dare? Xia Chun had an exquisite figure. Her words were powerful and resonant, as if thunder was ringing out. It caused the void to tremble continuously. Silver Armor took a step back. His eyes seemed to be bloodshot. This was his unwillingness to resign to his fate. Damn it! Damn it! He escaped. He actually escaped. Unable to restrain his anger, Silver Armor's eyes shone with fury. How could you let that guy escape? He destroyed everything I had. He destroyed the woman I loved. So now he's running away? Silver Armor kept roaring. Boom! Silver Armor raised his palm, and a rule wheel condensed in his hand. Frightening, godly, king divine power circulated, turning into a drop of water that was extremely heavy. The water droplet swept out and instantly splashed in the void. The blow went straight toward Bufong. It completely ignored Xia Chun, who was standing in front of Bufong. The blow contained the will of a god king, and he wanted to kill Bufong once and for all. It was as if Silver Armor's resentment toward the former lord of the Divine Chef Temple had been transferred to Bufong. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched violently as he stood behind Summer. Mu Hongzi, what did he do to Silver Armor? Why does Silver Armor have such a deep resentment toward Mu Hongzi? Sure enough, the identity of the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple is not a good thing. How dare you? Summer's eyes lit up and burst into dazzling light. She raised her perfect hand, and the power of law emerged over her body. The transparent law of space kept piling up. The space in front of her kept shrinking and shrinking. It made the distance between her and silver armor countless times wider. Silver armor's blow disappeared completely. The law of space was extremely profound, and it was extremely powerful when used in combat. Boom! Silver armor staggered back a few steps. He was infuriated. Silver armor, you've changed. How dare you disobey the divine emperor? Summer shouted. Her words struck at silver armor's heart. This caused silver armor to retreat continuously. The god emperor was like a huge rock that suppressed the world, weighing down on silver armor's heart. The surrounding people fell silent. Some were amazed by Summer's strength, and some were amazed by silver armor's crazy look. Even Bu Fong sighed softly. This silver armor is a man with a story and courage. That guy has run away. I'll find him and kill him. However, the divine chef temple. Even if the Lord has changed, it can't hide the fact that it should be destroyed. Silver armor sneered. Your Excellency, we'll meet again someday. I don't believe that you won't look for that man after he ran away. As long as your Excellency is not here, the divine chef temple will be flattened by me. Silver armor's cold voice was sonorous, and his voice sounded like heavy metal smashing into the void. A deafening rumble echoed out. He could not believe that the relationship between silver armor and the divine chef temple was so bad. Where are the silver armor guards? Silver armor took a step back and roared. The silver armor guards, who were stripped by Bai, straightened their backs, and their eyes shone brightly. Their eyes were full of pride, which was their pride for their Lord Silver Armor. Retreat. I'll come back in the future and flatten the divine chef temple. Silver Armor stood in the center of the crowd's encirclement, leaving behind his ruthless words. Then he turned around and was about to leave. Suddenly, the moment Silver Armor turned in the sky, a rumbling sound rang out. The cries of phoenixes rang through the sky. Billowing flames swept over, shining with a dazzling radiance. Oh! As soon as this strange phenomenon appeared, everyone was stunned. In the capital, the warships and the dragon horse chariots came to a sudden halt. Everyone raised their heads and looked at the sky. Over there, a terrifying existence soared through the air and approached. 9 phoenixes, which looked like phoenixes wrapped in burning flames, slowly drifted over. The phoenixes spread their wings and flapped them, sprinkling flaming feathers down. As soon as the feathers fell, they dissipated in midair, turned into pure energy, and fused with the void. The cries of phoenixes rang through the sky. A group of maids flew through the sky, their long dresses fluttering in the wind. One eunuch after another walked slowly with his head bowed. Welcome, the imperial concubine. His sharp voice seemed to tear the sky apart. The leading eunuch raised his head and cried out. The 9 phoenixes spread their wings and flew over, pulling a magnificent phoenix chariot. They looked like golden crows flying across the sky. Terrifying energy fluctuations were surging unceasingly. Silver Armor, who was about to turn back, jerked his head up, his eyes flashing with silver light. Shaoji, Silver Armor, seemed to be murmuring. As the phoenixes flew across the sky was blotted out by the phenomenon. The experts hiding in the void all revealed themselves and bowed respectfully toward the sky. In the divine dynasty, the nobility of one's status represented everything. Now that the imperial concubine was traveling, they had to show the necessary respect. It was just like how the imperial concubine used 9 phoenixes to pull her chariot. The phoenixes lived and bred in the phoenix nest, which, like the Dragon Valley, was a famous great world. Moreover, the most important thing was that the phoenix nest did not belong to the great world under the jurisdiction of the Xiai divine dynasty. Therefore, having 9 phoenixes pulling her chariot was enough to show how much the divine emperor valued the imperial concubine. Swoosh! The silver armor guards knelt down. Luo Sanyong, the young master, and the others also knelt on the ground. They had to salute the imperial concubine. This was the basic etiquette of subject. Bufong narrowed his eyes as he stared at the 9 phoenixes in the sky. His spirit sea had long been restless. Whether it was the golden divine dragon or the vermilion bird, they were restless. The golden divine dragon's restlessness was pure restlessness, the restlessness of seeing the opposite sex. The vermilion bird's restlessness was anger. However, Bufong was a little puzzled. The vermilion bird was also a female, so why was the golden divine dragon not restless? The maids and eunuchs were flying across the sky, and petals were falling. At the very least, the imperial concubine's trip was well planned. The phoenix chariot opened. A figure covered in golden light walked out of the phoenix chariot. As soon as the silhouette appeared, it was a peerless beauty that was incomparably moving. Everything else seemed to be overshadowed by her. Summer clasped her hands behind her back and twitched her red lips slightly. She was not in awe of the beautiful woman who stepped out of the phoenix chariot. "This coquettish bitch," she said disdainfully. "The lord of the divine chef temple, why didn't you kneel when you saw me?" The imperial concubine's eyes were proud and lofty. The 9 phoenixes wheeled around her, making her look like the real supreme empress of heaven. Bufong paused. He turned his head to the left and right, and only then did he realize that the woman was calling him. Bufong thought for a moment. His face was expressionless, and he didn't say anything, indicating that he didn't hear anything. All the people present were speechless. In the sky, a eunuch pinched an orchid and pointed a finger at Bufong. "How dare you? You're courting death if you don't kneel when you see the imperial concubine." The eunuch said, "Rumble." All of a sudden, the eunuch's eyes were filled with horror. A terrible aura spread in an instant. The void around the eunuch's body began to crack like a square. The eunuch's body also broke into pieces and was devoured by the distorted void. Summer clasped her hands behind her back, her long black hair fluttering in the wind. "Who gave you the courage to talk to the lord of the divine chef temple like that?" she said coldly. The eunuch who spoke was dead. She had killed him. Summer, who had mastered the law of space, was unimaginably strong. "Summer, you're the princess of this dynasty. Why are you against me? I'm talking about that chef. What does it have to do with you?" The imperial concubine said, looking at Summer with cold eyes. "I'm not a princess. I'm the deputy of the divine chef temple. That eunuch insulted the lord of the divine chef temple in front of me. He deserves to die," she said. She slowly stepped into the air, ascending step by step. Before long, she was in midair. She confronted the imperial concubine. All the people present kept quiet out of fear. She was indeed the hot-tempered princess. She was indeed domineering. She even dared to talk back to the imperial concubine. The imperial concubine's eyes were cold, and her chest was heaving. "Summer, do you really think I dare not punish you? You coquettish bitch. Do you think I'm afraid of you?" Summer shook her head and sneered. "Ha! Very well. I'm going to catch this chef today. I'd like to see who dares to stop me." The imperial concubine said coldly, "Silver armor." "Here," she cried. Silver armor took a step forward and rose into the sky in a flash. "Catch the chef." The imperial concubine continued. Silver armor's eyes flashed. "Yes." His voice rang out. Silver armor roared, and his aura erupted completely. At this moment, it was as if a dormant dragon had awakened. The whole capital was shaking. Rumble. He turned into a beam of silver light and sped toward Bufong. He raised his hand. Silver light gathered in his hand and turned into a sword. The sword was also flowing with silver light. This sword contained an incomparably terrifying killing intent. It represented the killing intent of a god king. As the sword swept across the sky, the void began to crack inch by inch. The silver light contained the power of at least 100 laws. The blow shocked everyone. Summer focused her eyes. "You really dare to disobey the divine emperor's order?" she said angrily. However, the imperial concubine's aura spread, and a supreme phoenix seemed to emerge behind her. The oppressive aura made Summer's body stiffen slightly. "Silver armor. Kill him. I'll take care of the divine emperor. This little chef must be killed." The imperial concubine's voice shook heaven and earth. Everyone's expression abruptly changed. Is the imperial concubine crazy? How dare she openly disobey the divine emperor's order in front of so many people in the capital? Silver Armor's expression did not change as he slashed with his sword. It carried the momentum of a fatal blow. Buffon took a deep breath. In his spirit's sea, the palm of his divine sense true form had already grabbed the god of cooking's divine power, liquid drop. In a flash, he would crush it and fight Silver Armor. However, just as Buffon was about to strike, the token of the divine chef temple's lord suddenly flashed. It turned into a stream of light and shot towards Silver Armor's sword. Chapter 1465. This change was beyond everyone's expectations. No one had expected the palace lord's token to move on its own. Originally, Buffon had planned to crush the god of cooking's divine power liquid drop. In fact, Buffon was not sure if the god of cooking's divine power liquid drop could help him fight against the god king. However, given the mystery of the god of cooking's liquid drop, it was really hard to say. However, the appearance of the token made Buffon not choose to crush the divine power liquid drop for the time being. He chose to wait and see. With a ripping sound, the token turned into a stream of light and shot out, cutting through the sky in an instant and rushing towards Silver Armor's sword light. The two collided with each other and produced a rumbling sound. A rumbling sound rang out, as if there was the sound of a powerful army surging. Silver Armor's sword light was immediately swept back. The medallion had actually blocked the attack of a divine king. This was rather unbelievable. Buffon stood where he was, squinting at the scene in the sky. The imperial concubine and Summer were confronting each other. The two women were putting on a show, not to mention two powerful women. Their auras collided with each other and kept rumbling. However, compared to the imperial concubine, Summer's aura was slightly weaker. After all, the imperial concubine was the imperial concubine. With the support of the 9 phoenixes, she was even more terrifying. No one had expected the imperial concubine to appear. After all, she was of noble status and would not choose to leave the palace easily. But this time, she actually appeared on the top of the Luo family skyscraper and attacked a restaurant. It was clear that the imperial concubine hated Buffon to the extreme. Part of the reason might be because Buffon had killed Emohen. But the more important reason, Buffon guessed, might be because of the vermilion bird's insults to the imperial concubine. Silver Armor stood proudly in the void, holding a silver longsword. The silver longsword looked like it was made of mercury, and there were round droplets of liquid constantly flowing on it. It was bright and colorful. However, Silver Armor's face was very serious. He stared at the palace lord's token floating in the distance, his eyes cold. "You want to stop me with a mere token? The imperial concubine said you have to die. You won't live past today," Silver Armor said. He stomped his foot down. His figure shot out once again, as if he had turned into a streak of light. His longsword swept out, slashing down thousands upon thousands of sword lights. Every single sword light contained a terrifying power of law. Buffon narrowed his eyes. He did not make a move. Instead, he stared at the palace master's token. Since this thing moved on its own, there must be something special about it. Was true enough. The token lit up. The two colors of ice and fire spread out from the token. It looked very unique. After a while, an elegant voice resounded from the token. "Xia xia xia xia" quietly passed by, leaving a little secret in my heart. Deep in my heart, deep in my heart, I can't tell you how the melodious and cheerful background music rang out, making Buffon speechless. This familiar tone, there was no doubt that it was that guy again in the distance. Xia Xia, who was confronting the imperial concubine, had an ashen face. He couldn't even control the law energy in his body, as if it was about to explode. His figure twisted. Summer's figure appeared in front of the token. Buzz Mu Hongzi's vague figure emerged in the void. He was handsome, slender, and as beautiful as a woman. There was no doubt that he was Mu Hongzi. He was as coquettish as ever. Accompanied by the background music, he swayed his waist briskly. However, Xia Xiaji slapped him. Mu Hongzi's shadow instantly became blurry, and it was almost shattered. I haven't seen you for a long time, but you're still as hot-tempered as ever? Can you be a little gentler? Like what my background music says. Mu Hongzi's figure gradually became clear. A hint of helplessness came over his handsome face. Summer's graceful figure heaved up and down in anger. Holding the silver sword, Silver Armor's eyes burst with monstrous killing intent. In the distance, the imperial concubine's body froze. Her red lips parted in astonishment. She looked at Mu Hongzi with a complicated look in her eyes. All kinds of emotions flashed through her eyes, including entanglement, complexity, regret, and resentment. The experts in the surrounding void were also dumbfounded. They looked at Mu Hongzi, who had shown up again, and did not know what to say. This annoying fellow, who stirred up a storm in the Divine Dynasty, is back again? Well, let's not talk about anything else. I just came out to make my presence known. Also, let me tell you frankly, Bufang will become the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple. Are you surprised? Are you surprised? I believe that under Bufang's leadership, the Divine Chef Temple will surely rise to glory and become the supreme power in the chaotic universe. Mu Hongzi said. The surrounding people were speechless. Bufang was speechless. Is this guy crazy? Bufang looked at Mu Hongzi, who was talking confidently in midair, and resisted the urge to slap him. No wonder Summer slapped him without saying a word when she saw him. This guy just came out to attract hatred for me. Summer hovered at Mu Hongzi's side with a complicated look in her eyes. Mu Hongzi's appearance this time was to announce Bufang's identity, and he would probably not show up again. For some reason, she felt a little sad in her heart. She felt that she must find this guy and give him a good beating. For a moment, the scene was a little awkward. Everyone was watching Mu Hongzi's performance. Silver Armor suppressed his aura. Suddenly, his aura exploded out. Go to hell. His resentment for Mu Hongzi exploded endlessly, and he approached in a flash like a beam of light. With a slash of the sword, the power of countless laws, the sun, and the vault of heaven rumbled and shook the whole Divine Dynasty. At this moment, Silver Armor did not hide his cultivation base at all. Heaven and earth shook when a God King attacked with his full strength. The expressions of the surrounding people changed. The consequences of Silver Armor's crazy attack were unimaginable. One expert after another soared into the sky and unleashed their power to form a barrier that enveloped the surrounding area. That way, the energy of Silver Armor's attack would not leak out and destroy the entire capital. The sword came down from the sky, filled with countless laws. The void shattered, and pitch-black rifts emerged and devoured everything. The token emitted a warm aura. A gentle smile came over Mu Hongzi's handsome face. The next moment, he raised a finger which seemed to be from a great distance. Rumble. The sky was filled with sword light, and all the sword light exploded. It was as dazzling as fireworks. After this move, Mu Hongzi's aura in the token began to slowly fade. Remember, from now on, the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple is Bufang. Mu Hongzi said solemnly before disappearing. His voice rang out. It seemed to resonate with the supreme existences. Rumble. In the direction of the Divine Chef Temple, streams of light soared into the sky. One by one, the experts stepped through the air. Their terrifying auras fluctuated, as if they had turned into ripples that connected into one. We elders of the Divine Chef Temple welcome the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple. A terrible aura spread. These elders of the Divine Chef Temple had superb cooking skills, and of course, their cultivation bases were even stronger. Most of them were perfected gods, and there was even a god king among them. These existences came walking over. Their auras were oppressive. The faces of all the people in the Divine Dynasty flickered. The imperial concubine's expression flickered. Silver Armor's face grew serious as well. With a rumble, Silver Armor fell back to her side. At Bufang's side, many old men walked in the air, their powerful auras spreading. Almost all the top members of the Divine Chef Temple had appeared, standing behind Bufang. Luo Sanyang and the young master were dumbfounded. How did Bufang's status suddenly become so noble? Why was the gap between people's fortunes so huge? Nine Phoenix's sword. There was a look of fear on the imperial concubine's beautiful face. The Lord of the Divine Chef Temple. Now, Bufang is really the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple. His status is so noble that she can't easily control it. Even if she dares, the Divine Emperor will not spare her. The Divine Emperor has a good relationship with the Divine Chef Temple, and he will not allow her to do this. Damu Hongzi. The imperial concubine's face twisted, and her beautiful face lost its elegance. She didn't dare to make another move. If she did, she would really be looking down on the Divine Emperor. Once the Divine Emperor wakes up, she will have to face his wrath. However, as the imperial concubine, she couldn't afford to give up like this. It was a great blow to her dignity as the imperial concubine that she wanted to capture Bufang with great fanfare, only to leave with her tail between her legs. She couldn't stand this injustice. Silver Armor understood this as well, so he sighed regretfully. He had wanted to take the opportunity to kill Bufang in an instant just now. Unfortunately, he had missed the opportunity. Now, if he made another move, it would be a real treason. The imperial concubine stood in front of the phoenix chariot, her face uncertain. Her eyes were fixed on Bufang, who was standing on top of the skyscraper. She had come here in person, but she couldn't kill this chef who had offended her dignity. She, the imperial concubine, was about to lose all her face. Do I really have to retreat like this? The imperial concubine was reluctant. Silver Armor saw how indignant she was. Silver Armor's eyes became gentle, and the images in his mind kept changing. They were images of his past memories. The girl in his memory was lovely, pure, and had a heartwarming smile. He had once told himself that he would spend the rest of his life protecting the girl. He didn't want the girl to suffer any injustice. So he tried everything he could to stay by the girl's side. The imperial concubine frowned. Suddenly, Silver Armor, who was at her side, moved. His eyes seemed a little blurry as he raised his hand and slowly stroked her face. He seemed to want to soothe her furrowed brows. The imperial concubine froze. She stared blankly. If Silver Armor really did that, the whole world would be in an uproar. After all, there were so many eyes watching them. Finally, when Silver Armor's hand was about to soothe the imperial concubine's brows, his eyes became clear. His outstretched hand also stopped in its tracks. The beauty of the past was gone. However, he was still Silver Armor. His original intention remained the same. Boom! Silver Armor's eyes suddenly became sharp. The next moment, as if teleporting, he closed the distance between them in an instant and charged toward Bufang. He wanted to kill Bufang with this move. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even the experts of the Divine Chef Temple were stunned. Summer twitched her mouth. That coquettish bitch! Protect the palace lord! The surrounding elders of the Divine Chef Temple roared, and their auras fluctuated and kept rising. Terrible auras merged together, as if to attack the sun and the moon. Silver Armor alone faced dozens of elders of the Divine Chef Temple. He was charging forward with an indomitable spirit. He was willing to sacrifice himself just to dispel the sorrow of the beauty. A clanging sound rang out. Silver Armor shattered with a rumble. As everyone sucked in their breaths, Silver Armor finally revealed his true face. It was a silver-haired man with a long, narrow sword scar on his face. His eyes were firm, and there was a smile on his lips. He crossed the ages with a sword just to kill Bufang. He turned to look at the imperial concubine with a gentle look in his eyes. Then, he thrust his sword across the sky, and a silver beam of law burst out. Bufang twitched the corner of his mouth as he watched Silver Armor dodge the elders, as if he had teleported. Is this an unprecedented sadomasochism? Are you sure you're not here to be funny? Bufang twitched his mouth slightly. The next moment, he crushed the divine power liquid drop in his spirit sea. Even if it was an unprecedented sadomasochism, he, Bufong, should not pay for it. A dragon roar resounded through the sky. The dragon-bone kitchen knife fell into Bufong's hand. The shadow of the golden divine dragon soared into the sky. The power of the god of cooking's divine power liquid drop poured into it. In the face of Silver Armor's sword, Bufong slashed out brazenly. Chapter 1466. Bufong had a temper. He wanted to kill Bufong with a sword that could cross the ages. Does he really think Bufong is a pushover? The pupils of the divine chef temple's elders constricted. They never thought that Silver Armor would attack Bufong at all costs. In the eyes of the experts of the older generation, their appearance represented everything in the divine chef temple's determination. But what was the result? Silver Armor was still determined to kill Bufong. This showed that he had no respect for the divine chef temple at all. In the distance, the imperial concubine had a complicated look in her eyes as she looked at Silver Armor, who was falling apart in midair. She pursed her red lips, and suddenly, a sad emotion surged in her heart. Silver Armor's familiar figure seemed to have been dug out from the depths of her memory. He was still Silver Armor, but she was no longer the Mo Shaoji of yesteryear. Bam! Silver Armor was released from Silver Armor's body. Silver Armor's figure traversed the void and appeared as if he had teleported. Boom! The attacks of the divine chef temple's elders fell one after another. The Silver Armor shattered, and in an instant, it turned into silver powder, disappearing into the void. However, it was only the armor that was broken. Silver Armor's sword was already coming toward Bufong. This sword contained a terrifying emotion, and that emotion was imbued with sorrow. Ridiculous sadness. Silver Armor's eyes became extremely calm, as if he had seen through life and death. This sword has fused with my law, the law of indifference. The law of indifference could not forget emotions. The sword came rumbling toward him. It seemed to strike his soul. Bufong's eyes shone brightly. He crushed the god of cooking's divine power, liquid drop. There was only one divine power, liquid drop. As soon as it was crushed, the divine power spread to Bufong's limbs and bones. Manipulated by Bufong, it poured into the dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand. In the face of Silver Armor's sword, Bufong was fearless and slashed out with his knife. It was called the kitchen knife of affliction. Under the knife, the void in front of Bufong kept crumbling. Silver Armor had unleashed the power of a god king. As for Bufong, he was just a demigod. Even if he was a demonic demigod, he was no match for a god king. When Silver Armor was facing off against Bufong, Bufong's expression changed. Everyone thought that Bufong would definitely die. The elders of the divine chef temple shouted angrily. Summer's expression changed, and in the blink of an eye, she tore the void apart. He wanted to teleport to Bufong's side and block Silver Armor's sword for Bufong. However, she felt that she might not make it in time. She had never expected Silver Armor's determination to be so strong. He was actually willing to sacrifice everything for that woman. What a joke. Ridiculous Silver Armor. Xiaochen didn't agree to the Divine Emperor marrying that woman. Even though the Divine Emperor was her brother, she knew very well how despicable that woman was. How many people's feelings had she used to achieve her current status? But he had to admit that this woman really had some tricks up her sleeve. So many experts were willing to risk their lives for her. Boom! A collision suddenly erupted. A terrible rumble swept across heaven and earth. The kitchen knife of affliction was a divine power. Its power was naturally extraordinary, and when it was driven by the god of cooking's divine power liquid drop, its power became even more terrible. With one strike, he made 99,999 slashes. Countless streams of knife energy blotted out the sky. However, Silver Armor's Sword of Forgetfulness was also a divine power. It was a divine power that Silver Armor had cultivated all his life. Its power was extremely terrible. As the sword descended, everyone felt their emotions being suppressed. Behind Bufong, Luo Sanyang the young master, and the others had been paralyzed in their chairs by the pressure of the sword. This was the full-powered attack of a god king, a divine ability. Even a god king would feel a pang of despair, let alone them. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Bu Fong fought back. That slash attracted everyone's attention. A knife against the sword of forgetfulness? There was no need to guess what the outcome would be. He was just a demigod. No matter how talented Bu Fong was, he was still a demigod. His body and soul would most likely be destroyed by the sword. Boom! A terrible explosion broke out. In the restaurant, the young master, Luo Sanyang, and the others were already in despair. They fell into their chairs and did not dare to move their fingers. Outside the restaurant, the explosion of the collision enveloped the whole world in sword energy and knife energy. A huge sword that blotted out the sky collided with the great knife. Summer emerged, tearing the sky apart and appearing outside the collision zone. She looked at the terrible rumbling that entangled each other. Her pupils constricted. I'm dead meat. Summer's heart was filled with despair. She felt that this was also Bu Fong's despair. In the imperial palace of the divine dynasty, outside the palace, the fifth prince's body trembled slightly. Not far away from him was an old man. He was a high-grade god, and his eyes were filled with horror. He's crazy. How could this guy be so stupid to fight a god king with the cultivation base of a demigod? Where did he get his confidence from? The fifth prince said, sitting in a chair and taking a sip of water. What a pity. His Highness wanted to recruit him, but I'm afraid there's nothing to recruit a dead man. What a pity for his heaven-defying talent. The old man sighed with emotion. When the Mo family learned of Bu Fong's monstrous battle achievements, the fifth prince wanted to recruit him. However, he did not expect that. However, before he could recruit him, Bu Fong had provoked a terrifying existence that was getting stronger and stronger. Even the imperial concubine was alarmed. What was more amazing was that if silver armor hadn't gone to his death, the chef might not have died, even if he had provoked the imperial concubine. The fifth prince shook his head, his heart filled with shock and doubt. Suddenly, there was a stir in the palace. There seemed to be the sound of something cracking. The fifth prince's expression changed instantly, and the old man sucked in a cold breath. This movement, could it be? The fifth prince and the old man looked at each other, both seeing astonishment in each other's eyes. The next moment, the sound of something piercing through the air rang out. The fifth prince and the old man shot out in an instant. Deep in the palace, a stone door opened with a rumble. Clear footsteps could be heard. A figure walked out of it step by step. A terrible aura of the law fell over the man's head, frightening all who saw it. He took a step forward, and in an instant he shot forward. The fifth prince looked up in horror and saw the figure walking through the air. The old man trembled. As a high-grade god, he couldn't muster the slightest strength to resist when he saw this figure. The crown prince, the old man said, trembling. The fifth prince's eyes widened. In the sky, the crown prince glanced indifferently at the fifth prince, as if he was looking at an ant. The next moment, he sped through the air toward the place where the battle had broken out in the distance. Those who provoke my mother will be killed without mercy. His figure disappeared, leaving only his cold words in the void. The fifth prince fell to the ground, slumped. The crown prince. This was the crown prince. With just a glance, he couldn't move at all. At first, he thought the gap between him and the crown prince was very small. But now, it seemed that the gap was still as huge as heaven and earth. A genius demigod who comprehended two supreme laws of the universe was too terrifying. Boom! In the middle of the explosion, terrible sword energy and knife energy were entangled. The imperial concubine's eyes were dazed. Perhaps at this moment, she felt a sharp pain in her heart. Boom! A figure fell out of the explosion. A silver sword drew an arc in the air, spun a few times, and then stabbed into the ground. The cry of a sword seemed to ring out. Specks of silver light began to quietly disperse from the longsword, continuously dissipating into the void. In the end, the silver sword disappeared as well. The knife energy and the sword energy began to slowly disperse. Gradually, the scene in the sky was revealed. Two figures stood proudly in the sky. Without his silver armor became less ferocious and sharp. Although there was a scar on his face that made him look extremely ugly, if it were not for the scar, silver armor might have been a rare handsome man. Silver armor looked at his hands, his eyes trembling slightly. In the sky, Bu Fang's face was pale. He staggered back a few steps and sat down on the ground. He breathed a long sigh of relief. It was still too much for him to fight against the God King, even with the help of the God of Cooking's divine power, Liquid Drop. The main reason was that he was too weak, which was why he felt it was difficult. Fortunately, he managed to block it. Bu Fang breathed a sigh of relief. The aura that had been stagnating in the sky collapsed one after another. The boulder that had been pressing down on everyone's hearts seemed to have fallen to the ground. Everyone stared at Bu Fang in disbelief. He blocked it. This is fake, right? Can a demigod block the sword of a god king? That's the divine ability of a god king, a divine ability that's imbued with emotion. Its power is simply destructive. The fact that Bu Fang was unscathed stunned everyone and refreshed their worldview. Summer appeared at Bu Fang's side. When she saw that Bu Fang's face was only a little pale, she breathed a sigh of relief. However, when she came to her senses, she was also a little shocked. This boy actually blocked the blow of a god king. A demigod blocking a god king? That's too terrifying. Summer raised her head and stared at silver armor in the distance. She vented her anger on silver armor. Silver armor. You're really getting more and more depraved. What qualifications do you think you have to be the God King's Imperial Guard? Summer almost used a questioning tone to say. Silver armor froze for a moment. He raised his head and sighed softly. He gave Summer a deep look, then glanced at Bu Fang. Then he turned to look at the Imperial concubine in the distance. His eyes were very gentle. Then he turned and rested his eyes on black armor. Gold armor, the leader of the Imperial Guards, did not appear. I'm indeed not worthy of the Divine Emperor's trust. But since I've already done it, what else can I do? There's no turning back. Silver armor smiled bitterly. Then he fixed his eyes on Bu Fang again. Then the corners of his mouth curled up slightly. Slash! Silver armor's fleshly body suddenly cracked. Two saber chis spread out from his body and continuously cracked. In the blink of an eye, silver armor's body completely collapsed. Bu Fang's kitchen knife of affliction was, after all, a divine ability. Coupled with the god of cooking's divine power Liquid Drop, its power was infinite. In the collision just now, Bu Fang was completely hit by the Sword of Forgetfulness. However, with the invincibility of the Vermilion Robe, Bu Fang was unscathed. It was just that he had consumed a lot of energy. Silver armor was not as invincible as the Vermilion Robe. So, under the attack of the kitchen knife of affliction, he kept collapsing. A boom rang out. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, silver armor's fleshly body completely exploded. The scene stunned everyone. How is that possible? Silver armor's fleshly body exploded? A blow from a demigod could blow up a god king? Bu Fang's eyes flashed. Bu Fang had no sympathy for silver armor's death. He flicked his finger. The invisible divine flame sprang out in an instant. It sped toward the place where the explosion happened. Boom! Flames soared into the sky. Under the burning of the divine flame, wisps of the power of law quickly fused. The fusion of a god king's wheel of law was enough to raise the divine flame to a very terrifying level. No! In the distance, the imperial concubine's pupils constricted as she growled. Silver armor died, just like that? How could he die? How could a mere demigod kill silver armor? Everyone in the surroundings fell silent. They didn't know what to say. The imperial concubine's mind was in a mess. A wave of sorrow surged in her heart. The next moment, she roared like crazy. Boom! All of a sudden, an extremely terrible pressure spread in the sky. It enveloped the whole place. Everyone present sucked in a breath of cold air and raised their heads to look at the void. There, slowly, a majestic golden figure condensed into existence. Everyone trembled in fear. Without hesitation, they all knelt down. The divine emperor. Chapter 1467. The divine emperor? Such pressure must belong to the divine emperor, without a doubt. Whether it was a high-grade god, a perfected god, or even a god-king, they all felt their strength being suppressed under this pressure. Even the flow of divine power in their bodies became sluggish. This was the pressure of the divine emperor, the ruler of the Xiai divine dynasty. The divine emperor had appeared. Everyone present was shocked. They either knelt on the ground or knelt in the void. The shock in their hearts seemed to be on the verge of surging up into raging waves. The imperial concubine's eyes were red. She was still immersed in the grief of Silver Armor's death. However, the divine emperor's appearance made her have no time to wipe her tears. A terrible pressure spread and enveloped the whole place. Bufang also looked up and felt the existence over his head, which looked like a blazing sun. The divine emperor. Bufang blinked. It was just a phantom of the divine emperor, not the real one. Many people finally realized what was going on and heaved a sigh of relief. The matter of the divine chef temple is over. You may all leave now. In midair, the divine emperor's voice fell abruptly and enveloped the whole place, shocking everyone. What? The divine emperor has spoken? The matter of the divine chef temple is over? A god king is dead, and the divine emperor is going to let it go? However, many people also understood that Silver Armor's death was his own fault. Strictly speaking, he had disobeyed the divine emperor's order. Even if he did not die, he would be held accountable by the divine emperor later. There was a strong reluctance in the imperial concubine's eyes. Silver Armor was dead, and so was Mo Hen. They were all killed by the chef in this restaurant. Was she really going to let it go? Why would the divine emperor let her go? This old man. The imperial concubine opened her mouth and wanted to say something. She really didn't want to let Bufang go, but the divine emperor's pressure made her tremble both physically and mentally. After all, he was the divine emperor, the ruler of the Xiai divine dynasty, an existence who ruled many great worlds around it. The golden figure burst into a dazzling light and emanated a mighty pressure that shocked the whole place. The surrounding people were in awe. A figure stepped on the air and came over. His speed was extremely fast. In an instant, he crossed the distance and landed beside the imperial concubine. "Mother," the newcomer said. This was an ordinary man. He wasn't wearing luxurious robes. His hair was disheveled, and he had a carefree appearance. However, his eyes were bursting with an extremely resplendent radiance. "Crown Prince." Everyone took a deep breath. Divine Emperor, Crown Prince, Imperial Concubine. All these big shots actually appear at the same time? The Imperial Concubine looked at the Crown Prince. Her eyes were red, and she seemed extremely haggard. The Crown Prince smiled gently, raised his hand, and gently comforted the Imperial Concubine's back. "It's fine. Let's go back first. I'll settle the rest for you. I'll definitely give you a satisfactory result," the Crown Prince said with a smile, his face full of confidence. The Imperial Concubine nodded. She knew that she would not be able to kill Bufang for revenge today. However, as long as her son spoke, Bufang would not live. It was because her son was the Crown Prince of the current dynasty, the most monstrous demigod. Moreover, he was an existence who had comprehended two supreme laws of the universe. What did comprehending two supreme laws of the universe mean? It meant that he could do whatever he wanted. The Imperial Concubine turned and gave Bufang a deep look, which was full of resentment. Bufang didn't care. He looked back indifferently. He was fearless, whether it was the Imperial Concubine or the Crown Prince. Xia, the Crown Prince with disheveled hair and a long white robe, glanced at Bufang with a gentle face. He nodded to Bufang. Then, he took the Imperial Concubine and rode away on the nine-headed phoenix. Before long, they crossed the sky and disappeared. The long line of maids and eunuchs also disappeared. For a moment, the oppressive aura that had enveloped the sky was gone. The divine emperor's phantom also vanished. The surrounding people stood up from their seats. Light flickered in their eyes. Summer breathed a sigh of relief. Although she was the divine emperor's younger sister, she knew very well how terrifying he was. She glanced at Bufong, and it seemed like she was looking up to him. She didn't expect that Bufong could kill Silver Armor, not to mention that he did it with Silver Armor's divine power. Unbelievable. Perhaps it was because of this little chef's unbelievable that Mu Hongzhi made Bufong the lord of the divine chef temple. Perhaps, as that unreliable guy, Mu Hongzhi, had said, this little chef could lead the divine chef temple to become the supreme power in the chaotic universe. She couldn't believe that she would think that way. She must be crazy. The storm seemed to have ended just like that. The people of the Luo family landed. They gave Bufong a deep look, then greeted Bufong and said nothing. They didn't bring Luo Sanyang back either. Perhaps Bufong's performance just now had won the approval of the Luo family. After all, the fact that a demigod could kill a god king, no matter what hidden means he had, was enough to show Bufong's terrifying talent. Moreover, Bufong was the current lord of the divine chef temple, and his status and identity were different from before. With Luo Sanyang here, she would not be in too much danger. These great families in the divine dynasty's capital were well aware of the divine chef temple's power. It was an extremely mysterious power. The young master looked at Bufong with a strange expression. Of course, his eyes were filled with curiosity and blazing fighting spirit. He thought he already knew the depth of Bufong's strength, but now he realized that Bufong's strength was far greater than that. That move just now had directly killed Silver Armor. It was a great shock to him. He never thought that Bufong could be so strong. This meant that Bufong had held back when they fought, didn't he? Since when did he, the young master, need someone to hold back? Mr. Bu's strength is really unfathomable. Today I have witnessed it. The next time I see you, I will have a good look at your real strength. The young master's eyes were full of fighting spirit. Then, he left with his men. Luo Sanyang's friends were very excited. It was too exciting. They didn't expect to encounter such an exciting thing when they came out for dinner today. They walked out of the restaurant with an excited look on their faces. When they passed by Xiao Bai, they raised their hands curiously and touched Xiao Bai's round belly. Xiao Bai raised a hand and scratched his head. The girls were so frightened that they screamed. Bufong breathed a sigh of relief. Then, he walked back into the restaurant. He took out an oyster pancake and ate it to restore his strength. After bidding farewell to Bufong, the elders of the divine chef temple left one after another. If it were not for Mu Hongzhi's token, these old men would not even bother to move. After everyone left, the restaurant suddenly became a little deserted. Although the battle had just happened, the restaurant was still clean and spotless. With the departure of Summer and Luo Sanyang, only Yu and Hades Era were left in the restaurant. Yu and Era have seen the real fighting prowess of the divine dynasty today. Any one of them could suppress them to the point that they couldn't even budge. The pressure was too great. Hades Era was even more agitated. He realized that he was just an ant here. After working hard with Bufong for a while, he turned around and entered the heaven and earth farmland to cultivate in seclusion. Bufong closed the door of the restaurant. He took Yu, left the restaurant, and returned to the divine chef temple. You, on the other hand, have gone to the divine chef temple's cultivation ground to cultivate. Bufong returned to his luxurious room. Today's battle was also quite stimulating for him. He realized that he was still not strong enough. If he didn't have the divinity liquid droplets, he wouldn't even be able to put up a fight against a god king. The feeling of helplessly waiting for death made Bufong very uncomfortable. He sat cross-legged in a luxurious room. Bufong's eyes were glowing. It was time to increase his strength. Bufong flipped his hand. A fruit of law appeared in his hand. This was the reward from the system for opening the store, the fruit of law. The last time Bufong ate a fruit of law, he comprehended a supreme law of the universe, the law of transmigration. To Bufong, the transmigration law increased his strength tremendously. However, this was far from enough. The difference was too great. If Bufong wanted to increase his cultivation level, the transmigration law was naturally not enough. Zhang Xian thought. Bufong picked up the colorful fruit of law and tore its skin. After tearing off the skin of the law fruit, a fragrant juice flowed out and filled the air. It seemed to be full of magic, attracting Bufong's eyes. He opened his mouth, stuffed the fruit into it, and took a bite. Slurp, the soft and tender flesh went into Bufong's body in an instant. At this moment, Bufong's divine sense was suddenly drawn. Rumble. It was another familiar place. The chaotic sea of laws. Here, countless laws were drifting, all of them exuding a different kind of charm. Coming here again, Bufong seemed to be a little familiar with the place. He walked and roamed slowly in it. He could feel the kindness emanating from the various laws. However, these laws were nothing to Bufong. What he needed to comprehend was naturally not an ordinary law. It must be a supreme law of the universe, like the law of transmigration. A terrible aura filled the air. A dragon, a phoenix, a tiger, and a black turtle emerged one after another, wheeling around Bufong and surrounding Bufong. Bufong's aura emanated and guided them. Since ancient times, it had been very difficult to comprehend the supreme laws of the universe. Even the crown prince, who had never been surpassed before and would never be surpassed, had only comprehended two supreme laws. Even so, the crown prince was regarded by the divine dynasty as the most promising existence to become a heaven god in millions of years. Therefore, it was naturally somewhat difficult for Bufong to comprehend a second supreme law of the universe. Difficult? With a dragon roar, a golden divine dragon wheeled around Bufong and entered Bufong's body. There was a cracking sound. The scene in front of Bufong collapsed in an instant. Rumble. In the divine chef temple, a beam of light suddenly shot into the sky. It appeared only for a moment, then quickly disappeared. However, the sudden appearance of the aura attracted the attention of countless experts in the capital. They looked up, widened their eyes, and stared incredulously at the disappearing beam of light. The aura of the supreme law of the universe. Someone comprehended another supreme law of the universe? Are the supreme laws of the universe so common? Why are they so easy to comprehend? The experts kept talking. They found that the direction the aura was dispersing to was the divine chef temple. The expression on everyone's face grew stranger and stranger. The divine chef temple again? Has the divine chef temple been very active lately? It was late at night, and it was very quiet. Outside the divine chef temple, a clear sound of footsteps rang out. A silhouette slowly walked over, step by step, meticulous and strict. Finally, he came to the divine chef temple's skyscraper. His hair was disheveled, and he was clad in a white robe. The crown prince slowly raised his head and looked at the towering building. A smile came over the corner of his mouth, and the moonlight shone on his face, making it look very gentle. The divine chef temple. It's time to settle the score. Chapter 1468. Bufong opened his eyes, and his mind became clear. Just now, he felt as if he had fallen into an illusion. It was a very strange feeling. Eating a fruit of law meant that one could comprehend a law. This was enough to show the heaven-defying effect of the fruit of law. However, in fact, eating a fruit of law didn't guarantee 100% comprehension of a law. Of course, there were also cases where eating a fruit of law had no effect at all. This was the second time Bufong had eaten a fruit of law, but he was lucky enough to reach the sea of law and comprehend the 3,000 laws. In the birthplace of the laws of the universe, Bufong was once again accepted by the laws. As for what kind of law it was, Bufong himself had to ponder for a while. He spread his hand, and with a thought, a vague power of law emerged in his palm. The power of law seemed to be filled with thousands of strange things, which made Bufong frown slightly. Roar. In a trance, Bufong seemed to hear a dragon's roar. This roar made Bufong's pupils constrict. The next moment, the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. The power of the law seemed to be attached to the dragon bone kitchen knife, making the knife's power continuously increase. It was a wonderful feeling. This was not the law of transmigration that Bu Fong had comprehended before. It was a new law. However, the power of these laws was also extraordinary. Moreover, it was so compatible with the dragon bone kitchen knife. Bu Fong calmed his heart and began to feel the wonders of the dragon bone kitchen knife. With his divine sense, Bu Fong found that the space around the dragon bone kitchen knife was slowly twisting and cracking. Oh! Bu Fong took a deep breath. He swung the dragon bone kitchen knife, and a big hole was torn in the space. This move made Bu Fong's eyes burst with brilliant light. This is the law of space. Bu Fong's heart skipped a beat. Just like the law of space that Summer comprehended, the law of space that Bu Fong comprehended had a great effect on space. He felt inexplicably happy in his heart. Bu Fong did not expect that he would comprehend a supreme law of the universe, and a law of space at that. In fact, no matter which supreme law of the universe Bu Fong comprehended, he would be very excited. There was no weak supreme law of the universe, and every supreme law of the universe had its own reason for existence. Of course, it was because he had just comprehended it. In addition, Bu Fong's cultivation was limited, so his understanding of the law of space was not as thorough as Xia's. He flicked his finger. The space in front of his finger slowly twisted and collapsed. The law of space was mysterious and terrifying. Coupled with the law of transmigration that Bu Fong had comprehended, perhaps the current Bu Fong was much stronger than before. With joy in his heart, Bu Fong began to fiddle with the law of space. The Crown Prince had come out of seclusion. This news spread like wildfire, causing everyone's spirits to rise. He was the strongest among the demonic demigods, an existence who had comprehended two supreme laws of the universe. Such a genius would certainly be the successor of the divine dynasty in the future. He was the weather vane of the younger generation. As soon as the Crown Prince came out of seclusion, all the younger generation in the capital began to stir. One after another, many geniuses came out of seclusion. They wanted to challenge the Crown Prince to gain supreme glory. As long as they could defeat him, the glory they would gain would make them famous in the divine dynasty's records. Therefore, the Crown Prince coming out of seclusion was a major event. It was a major event that attracted the attention of many geniuses. The sound of something piercing through the air kept ringing. Outside the divine chef temple's skyscraper, the Crown Prince stood with his hands clasped behind his back. The gentle moonlight sprinkled on his face, making it look very warm. One step at a time, the Crown Prince walked slowly into the divine chef temple skyscraper. As time passed, the sound of something piercing through the air kept ringing. One demigod after another flew over from all directions in the divine dynasty's capital and gathered around the skyscraper. Some stood on the rooftops under the moonlight, their robes fluttering in the wind. Some had a determined look on their faces and exuded a mighty aura. Some of them just stood there like giant beasts from the desolate era. As soon as the Crown Prince entered the divine chef temple, these experts who wanted to challenge him all followed him. In the skyscraper of the divine chef temple, on the first floor, the Crown Prince clasped his hands behind his back. He was dressed in a loose robe, his hair disheveled, and he looked very handsome. As soon as he stepped into the skyscraper, many people in the skyscraper exclaimed and cried out. The Crown Prince's eyes shone like torches as they swept across the crowd. At last, they seemed to burst into blazing light and cast into the distance. It was as if he wanted to see through everything in the distance. Boom, boom, boom. One figure after another descended. Rumbling filled the air. The experts in the divine chef temple were as quiet as cicadas in winter. As they stared at the experts who had surrounded the Crown Prince, they couldn't help but suck in a cold breath. They're the young masters of the various mansions. They are all the top demigods in the divine dynasty's capital. Why are they all here? Is it because of the Crown Prince? Now that the Crown Prince has come out of seclusion, these young masters naturally won't give up the chance to challenge him. Isn't it always like this every time the crown prince comes out of seclusion? There's bound to be a battle. The experts in the divine chef temple lowered their heads and whispered. Some people were very excited because they were actually able to witness a battle between demigods with their own eyes. This made them very excited. It was an honor that no one could resist to challenge and defeat the crown prince. Rumble. A young master's eyes shone like torches as he stared at the crown prince, as if he was staring at a prey. He was extremely strong and was also a genius demigod, but he had comprehended more than one law. The crown prince's might is like a thunderclap. Please enlighten me in today's battle. The young master's eyes gleamed with excitement. The next moment, all his aura exploded out and rushed toward the crown prince. He wanted to fight the crown prince outside the divine chef temple. In addition to the challengers, there were many people watching the show. For example, the fifth prince, the old man beside him, and so on. They all wanted to see the crown prince's glory. The corners of the crown prince's mouth curved upward. He seemed to be a gentleman. He narrowed his eyes at the challenges from the young masters around him. "It looks like you've been waiting for me for a long time," the crown prince said. "I've kept you waiting. I'm really sorry, but unfortunately, you're no match for me." The crown prince smiled gently, but his words were confident and arrogant. The eyes of the young masters burst into dazzling light. Some of them surged with aura and launched thunderous attacks in an instant. At this moment, the great hall of the divine chef temple was subjected to extremely terrible attacks. A group of genius demigods struck out in an instant. Their auras towered into the sky, stirring the wind and clouds. The power of all kinds of laws spread out, and some of the young masters comprehended the strongest laws of the universe. The crown prince, on the other hand, stood as still as a mountain, planning to fight 10 of them alone. With his strength, he could do it. It was a spectacular scene, and many people exclaimed in surprise and feasted their eyes. The divine chef temple's defensive array was activated, so that the building would not be destroyed in the battle between the crown prince and the others. Rumble. Of course, the young masters were all proud. Instead of besieging the crown prince, they charged one by one. They rushed to the crown prince's side and collided in an instant. Flesh collided with flesh, and the power of law collided with the power of law. After a chaotic battle, countless power of law burst out. Every genius demigod attacked, but they were all defeated by the crown prince. The crown prince talked and laughed, throwing out a palm with every step he took. He walked slowly. The young masters around him were all defeated. Every one of them was defeated. All the genius demigods were suppressed. After coughing up blood and flying backward, they rose to their feet and left in dismay. Some were horrified, and some were in awe. The crown prince was, after all, the crown prince. He was an invincible existence in the demigod realm. Until now, the crown prince had not shown his true strength. Every time he came out of seclusion, there would be a chaotic battle. But in the end, it was the crown prince who won. Many genius demigods could not even force the crown prince to use his second supreme law of the universe. In the divine chef temple, the crown prince was in a sorry state. The crown prince talked and laughed. The young masters around him all smiled bitterly. They rose to their feet and cupped their fists slightly at the crown prince. The crown prince smiled faintly. Then he turned his eyes and rested them on the experts of the divine chef temple. He clasped his hands behind his back, his hair disheveled, and his eyes gleamed menacingly. "I'm Xia, the crown prince of the divine dynasty. I've come to challenge the lord of the divine chef temple." The crown prince said lightly. Although his tone was indifferent, his words were bursting with great confidence. His confidence made the people around him tremble. The expressions of the divine chef temple's experts changed dramatically. The face of the blonde woman who was in charge of receiving Bufong was filled with horror. The atmosphere quieted down a little. The crown prince shook his head. His hair was disheveled as he continued to walk forward. His hair was disheveled as he continued to walk forward, and soon he was out of the first floor. Then he stepped onto the second floor. As soon as he arrived, a terrible pressure descended, causing the Crown Prince's eyes to narrow. "Oh, Crown Prince, please go back," a surging voice rang out. No one knew when the expert of the Divine Chef Temple had appeared. It was an old man. He was one of the Divine Chef Temple's elders, a perfected god. As he stood there, a terrible aura surged out of him and seemed to destroy heaven and earth. The power of a perfected god was amazing. In the face of the pressure of a perfected god, the Crown Prince was very calm. As the Crown Prince, he could even fight a perfected god. Rumble. However, the Crown Prince's eyes were clear. He didn't come here to fight these old fogies. His target was Bufong. He only needed to fight Bufong and destroy his Tao heart, and then everything would be fine. An exceptional demigod? Could there be an existence more exceptional than him in the world? Anyone who lost a battle with him would start to doubt their life. With a thought in his mind, golden energy began to gather in his hand. Very quickly, a golden longbow was formed in his hand. With a creak, he drew the bow and aimed it at the Divine Chef Temple's old man. A terrible aura spread in all directions. A deafening boom rang out. The arrow on the longbow shot out, instantly tearing through the void, causing the void to constantly crack. The perfected god's pupils constricted slightly. The law of space. The old man breathed a sigh of relief. He kept slapping his palms in front of him. Then, one power of law after another superimposed. He wanted to block the arrow. Boom! Boom! A collision broke out. The whole Divine Chef Temple seemed to be shaking. The defensive array swayed, unable to bear the impact. The Divine Chef Temple's old man took a few steps back. A look of amazement came over his face. As expected of His Highness, the Crown Prince. He's indeed a genius. He sighed. Such a genius was really terrifying. Even the Palace Master might not be able to deal with him. Although Bufong could kill a God King with a single slash, the Crown Prince's strength was no weaker than that of an ordinary God King. After all, no one had ever seen someone who had comprehended two supreme laws of the universe. The void slowly split open. Summer walked out of the void. She looked at the Crown Prince and took a deep breath. The Crown Prince nodded at her. Then he looked up into the distance. There, a clear sound of footsteps rang out. A thin figure walked over unhurriedly, step by step. Bufong looked expressionlessly at the Crown Prince, whose hair was disheveled, and twitched the corner of his mouth. "I heard you're looking for me?" Chapter 1469. When the thin figure appeared, everyone could not help but suck in a breath of cold air. "He's here." The people who were watching widened their eyes in shock. Bufong, the lord of the Divine Chef Temple, the genius demigod the Crown Prince was looking for, had finally appeared. The fact that the Crown Prince was looking for Bufong made him famous throughout the Divine Dynasty's capital. The young lords of the various manors were watching closely. Although they had been defeated by the Crown Prince, they had long gotten used to it. But now, this battle made their blood boil. Bufong and the Crown Prince had never fought before. The outcome of the battle was still uncertain. After all, the potential and strength Bufong had shown since his debut was no weaker than that of the young masters, and he had even crushed many of them. In that case, it was not impossible for him to fight the Crown Prince. Even though Bufong had only comprehended one supreme law of the universe, but Bufong had divine powers. Bufong had two divine powers, so he should be qualified to fight the Crown Prince. Everyone on the second floor of the Divine Chef Temple held their breath. All they could hear was the clear sound of footsteps echoing in the air. The Crown Prince's hair was disheveled, and he looked arrogant. He stared at Bufong in the distance and narrowed his eyes. Bufong was the lord of the Divine Chef Temple, the guy his mother had asked him to cripple and kill. Before coming to the Divine Chef Temple, the Crown Prince had searched for Bufong's deeds. He had fought young masters, killed Emohen, slaughtered high-grade gods, and killed a god king with a knife with a special method. He had a divine power and comprehended the law of transmigration, the supreme law of the universe. He had to admit that all these showed the chef's genius. The Crown Prince was a little excited about such a genius. He had been lonely for far too long. For so long, he had never met an existence that could fight against him. He hoped that Bufang would not let him down. "I heard you were looking for me." Bufang's vermilion robe flapped noisily as he glanced indifferently at the Crown Prince in the distance. Summer floated in the void. Her eyes flickered, making it hard for others to see through her thoughts. "You finally came out. The Lord of the Divine Chef Temple?" The Crown Prince chuckled. He looked at Bufang strangely. Bufang looked at him expressionlessly and said nothing. "Do you need something from me? If you have something to say, just say it." "I'm very busy. I still have to open the shop when the sun rises," Bufang said. Hearing Bufang's words, the Crown Prince suddenly narrowed his eyes, and a sharp light suddenly burst out from his eyes. Was this guy looking down on him? He was completely looking down on him. "Open a shop? Very good. This prince will go and support you when I have time." One of this prince's greatest hobbies is to taste delicious food. "I hope your food won't disappoint me." The Crown Prince chuckled. "Of course, before that, you must survive." His words fell. The entire atmosphere suddenly changed. The sharp atmosphere made everyone present feel as if their hearts were being cut by a knife. Terrifying, the Crown Prince's aura is truly terrifying. "Fight me. If you win, you can open your shop in peace. From now on, you won't bother me anymore. If you lose, you will obediently follow me into the palace, kneel in front of my mother, kowtow, and apologize," the Crown Prince said. "If you lose, your life belongs to me." The Crown Prince's words caused an uproar in the crowd. This kind of request was too much. No one had expected that the Crown Prince would make such a request. How could Bufang be so stupid as to agree to it? The faces of many experts in the Divine Chef Temple turned cold. As expected, the Crown Prince did not come with good intentions. Xia Xia's face was wrapped in a haze, making it impossible to see the changes in her emotions. However, it was obvious that she wasn't very happy either. After all, she was the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple. Although she would leave soon, she was still the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple. Of course, she didn't say anything, because it was Bufang who was in charge of everything. The Crown Prince's eyes were clear, and the corners of his mouth curved upward. He felt that Bufang would not agree to his request, so he had prepared an excuse. After all, this was the Divine Chef Temple's home court. Although he was strong, the Divine Chef Temple was guarded by a God King. If he was left behind, only the Divine Emperor could take him away. In that case, as the Crown Prince, it would be very embarrassing for him. Just when the Crown Prince thought that Bufang would not agree and was about to change his words, Bufang spoke. "Fine, I'll agree to your request, but it's not fair. If you lose, you'll leave with your tail between your legs. If I lose, I'll be at your mercy." Bufang said faintly. He shook his head, then looked at the Crown Prince and said, "If you lose, stay here and be a waiter in my restaurant. Your life and death belong to me. What do you think?" Bufang looked at the Crown Prince and said, "How presumptuous!" The Crown Prince's eyes burst into a bright light in an instant. Anger was surging in him. What a bold fellow! Does he think he can win? The surrounding experts sucked in their breaths as well. They felt that Bufang was too crazy. The condition was like a slap in the Crown Prince's face. If the Crown Prince really loses, will he really be forced to be a waiter? Even the Divine Emperor can't afford to lose to this man. I agree to your request because you have no chance of beating me. You have no idea how strong I am." The Crown Prince's hair was waving in the wind, making him look like a ferocious demon, giving off an intimidating aura. Bufang nodded. An uproar suddenly resounded. At this moment, the news spread throughout the Divine Dynasty's capital almost in an instant. The Crown Prince was going to fight the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple. This was an unprecedented battle, a battle between the peak geniuses of the demigod realm. The news was like a tidal wave, sweeping out wave after wave. It was like a raging wave slamming on the shore. The whole capital was boiling with excitement. "Very well. since you've all agreed to this battle, in order to let you fight to your heart's content, I've specially opened up a battlefield for you, Summer said. She was shrouded in a hazy light, looking mysterious and unfathomable. Give me 2 hours. After that, you can fight to your heart's content, and you can also prepare for the battle within 2 hours. Summer said. In the next moment, she stretched out her hand, tore space, and stepped into the torn space. Rumble. A rumbling sound came from the void, as if something terrible was pulling it. The news came. Late at night, figures kept flying across the main road in the Divine Dynasty's capital. They were moving so fast that they seemed to have turned into a meteor. On rooftops on the official road, and in the sky, warships sped, dragon horses galloped, and figures flickered. They were all rushing in the direction of the Divine Chef Temple. After all, such a battle would shake the world and be recorded in the annals of history. In the palace, 9 phoenixes flew behind the imperial concubine, her eyes shining brightly. Ear is going to fight that little beast. Good. Ear's innate talent is unprecedented, and he's definitely going to succeed the Divine Emperor's throne. That little bastard is courting death by fighting Ear, the imperial concubine said, clenching her fists. The next moment, she ordered everyone to go to the Divine Chef Temple to watch the battle. Luo Hui, Luo Sanyang, and the others of the Luo family all rushed out impatiently. In King Pingyang's residence, in the secret chamber where the Divine Emperor was cultivating in seclusion, King Pingyang slapped the door and smashed it to pieces. Father, what are you doing? The young master stared at King Pingyang with a dumbfounded face and almost coughed up a mouthful of blood. The Crown Prince is going to fight Bu Fong in the Divine Chef Temple. If you don't go, you will regret it for the rest of your life. I'm doing this for your sake. King Pingyang said. The Crown Prince is going to fight Bu Fong. The young master paused, then his eyes lit up. He no longer cared about cultivating in seclusion. He broke out of seclusion and went straight to the Divine Chef Temple. The Mo family, the Zhao family, and many other aristocratic families had sent their experts to the Divine Chef Temple. The Mo family, especially the Mo family, were all ferocious and looking forward to the Crown Prince avenging them. The Crown Prince also had half of the Mo family's bloodline, so he was also a member of the Mo family. Outside the Divine Chef Temple, all kinds of luxurious warships were docked. One expert after another walked out of the warships. They did not talk to each other and just walked toward the Divine Chef Temple. Tonight's focus was still the battle between the Crown Prince and Bu Fong. 2 hours later, at the top of the skyscraper of the Divine Chef Temple, the void was torn apart. Xiaxia's graceful figure slowly walked out from within. Her aura fluctuated as she waved her hand. A rumbling sound rang out in the void. Many experts sucked in a mouthful of cold air as they raised their heads to look at the sky. A vast and boundless space filled with energy fluctuations emerged. It seemed to be made of countless tiny spaces, and because there were so many spaces, it was much more stable. This was the battlefield that Summer had specially created for the battle between Bu Fong and the Crown Prince. The Crown Prince's eyes flashed. He was indeed a god king. He had also comprehended the law of space, but he was still far from being able to do what Summer had done. When he took a step forward, the void seemed to compress under his foot. The next moment, he stepped into the world created by Summer. Bu Fong also stepped in unhurriedly. As soon as he stepped into the space, it was as if he was cut off from the rest of the world. He couldn't hear any clamor or noise. Only the Crown Prince's violent aura and the flapping sound of Bu Fong's vermilion robe remained in the space. The world seemed to be transparent. Under the building, the crowd looked up and could clearly see the battle. The Phoenix chariot rumbled. The imperial concubine was watching the battle from a corner of the void. She had full confidence in the Crown Prince. All the god kings, who were hiding in the void, were also watching the battle with great interest. It was not an exaggeration to call this a battle of unprecedented proportions. The clash between the two monstrous geniuses excited many people. However, the most exciting thing was the bet. The bet between victory and defeat. If Bufang lost, he would become the Crown Prince's prisoner, and his life and death would be in the Crown Prince's hands. If the Crown Prince lost, he would also become Bufang's prisoner, and his life and death would be in the hands of Bufang. Therefore, this battle was a matter of life and death. At the thought of this, people could not help but get excited. Everyone's breathing became rapid. The young master of King Pingyang and Luo Sanyang, who were hiding in the void, watched the battle on the top of the building with worry in their hearts. Can Bufang really fight the Crown Prince? This was not only their doubt, but also the doubts of the surrounding spectators. It has begun. Someone exclaimed, raised his hand, and pointed at the top of the building. In the space there, the battle suddenly broke out. A long roar rang out. It was the Crown Prince's roar. It seemed to come from ancient times and spread out in an instant. It filled the sky, ringing in their ears as if to tear their eardrums. In the void, the Crown Prince completely exploded. A terrible pressure swept across heaven and earth. The wheel of law emerged and condensed into a golden bow. An arrow was knocked to the bow. The arrow roared and turned into a golden dragon. Swish. The golden arrow shot out. It roared like a five-clawed golden dragon. The Crown Prince disappeared from where he was in an instant, as if he had teleported. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of Bufang. His fist, which seemed to break a mountain, smashed toward Bufang's face. Wrapped in the power of the arrow, the power of the fist, and the power of the arrow exploded out at the same time. Chapter 1470. The Crown Prince was a monstrous genius with unprecedented talent. The Divine Emperor had many children, but there was only one who could be called the Crown Prince. He was the one with the most monstrous talent. Although many princes coveted the position of the Divine Emperor, only the Crown Prince had a real chance of inheriting the throne. He was a monstrous genius who had comprehended two supreme laws of the universe. Only the Crown Prince could grow to the level of the Divine Emperor, or even surpass the Divine Emperor and become a heaven god. After all, even the Divine Emperor had only comprehended one supreme law of the universe. Boom! He threw a punch. Like a dragon rising from the abyss, the void kept cracking and exploding. After the punch, there was also an arrow. The arrow was wrapped in the shadow of the dragon, and it whistled out along with the fist. Dragon shadow arrow, the Crown Prince said cheerfully. Buzz, all of a sudden, the arrow disappeared as if it had pierced through the void. In front of Bufang's face, the void cracked. A golden arrow turned into a golden dragon baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it burst out of it, tearing heaven and earth apart. It shot toward Bufang, who was very close at hand. It was so fast that the others couldn't react in time. The young masters down below all sucked in their breaths of cold air. This was the use of the law of space, the supreme law of the universe. The law wrapped around the arrow, making it shoot through the void. If Bufang didn't have any tricks up his sleeve, he would be pierced by this arrow in an instant. Perhaps the battle would end before it even started. The young masters were a little sad because the Crown Prince hadn't used this move when they fought him. Obviously, in the Crown Prince's mind, they weren't strong enough for him to use a trick of this level. A chill surged. Bufang focused his eyes. The next moment, he raised his hand. With yin and yang energy swirling over his palm, he grabbed the dragon shadow arrow. Swish! Swish! A clanging sound rang out, and sparks flew in all directions. The dragon shadow arrow pierced through the void with great force, spinning in Bufang's palm as if it wanted to break free from Bufang's grasp. The arrow kept moving forward and spinning, trying to pierce Bufang's head. Unfortunately, in the end, he was caught by Bufang. The arrow was less than an inch away from Bufang's pupils. The chill made Bufang's hair stand on end. Not bad. The Crown Prince's figure appeared, and he was still talking and laughing. Emperor Fist. The Crown Prince's expression became solemn as he punched out. This punch did not contain any laws, only a surging aura. This was a punch of pure aura. The Emperor's aura was completely wrapped in this punch. Facing the Crown Prince was like facing the real, supreme, divine Emperor. This is about making use of the situation. This was the fist technique of the divine Emperor. Er's talent is indeed monstrous. The 8 desolate tyrant Emperor fist is the divine Emperor's famous divine ability. Er's cultivation is still low, so he can't use it. However, with his great wisdom, he adapted the fist technique. With the might of the divine Emperor, this little bastard will lose without a doubt. The imperial concubine stood on the phoenix carriage, her face filled with murderous intent. She was full of killing intent for Bufong. Imohen was dead, and so was Silver Armor. All the important people in her life were killed by Bufong. Her resentment for Bufong had reached an endless level. If the divine Emperor hadn't intervened, she would have eradicated the divine chef temple. Bufong squeezed the arrow and crushed it. Then he raised his Taotai arm and threw a punch at the Crown Prince's Emperor fist. Bam! Flesh collided with flesh. Bufong felt as if all the blood and energy in his body were rumbling. His divine sense froze for a moment. Suddenly, he felt as if he had sensed the figure of a monarch descending upon the world, and it almost made him kneel. However, it was only a momentary pause. Bufong's eyes became clear. Bufong took a step back. He was actually forced back a step by the Crown Prince's punch. When Bufong realized it, the Crown Prince's second punch was coming. The second punch was an uppercut. It came from the bottom and went straight for Bufong's chin. If it hit, it would probably smash his head off. The void seemed to be trembling. The surrounding people kept quiet out of fear. The Crown Prince's power was too amazing and terrible. Even if he didn't use the supreme law of the universe, he was an outstanding talent among his peers, an existence who stood at the peak. The divine Emperor's inheritance was enough for him to look down on his peers. This is going to be difficult. The battle has fallen into the Crown Prince's rhythm. Once the Emperor fist starts, each punch will be stronger than the last. In the end, Bufong will be destroyed in the storm. He's indeed the Crown Prince. The battle hasn't even begun, but he has already decided the ending. At the top of the skyscraper, a shocking battle broke out. Below the skyscraper, the comments of many experts could be heard. Everyone took deep breaths and couldn't help but sigh with emotion. In the direction of the imperial concubine, many people sneered. The eunuchs and maids were all giggling. They were laughing disdainfully at Bufong. The Crown Prince was a lofty star. He was not someone that a speck of dust on the ground could fight against. There was only one outcome for overestimating one's strength. He would be beaten to death by a flurry of punches. Rumble. It sounded like stormy waves beating against the shore. The Crown Prince's eyes shone brighter and brighter, as if they were bursting with divine light. He threw punch after punch like a storm, and his aura grew stronger and more terrible. It kept climbing like a stairway to heaven. His terrible aura almost collapsed the void. I'm a Crown Prince, the #1 expert of the divine dynasty's younger generation. Who do you think you are? How dare you fight me? The Crown Prince roared. The crowd fell silent. They could only watch as Bufong was suppressed, and he seemed to be out of breath. Luo Sanyang pursed her lips, her eyes full of worry. Young Lord Pingyang sighed softly. The Crown Prince was terrifyingly strong. There were 81 punches in total in the Emperor fist. Once all 81 punches were completed, the last punch could even shatter a star. Even a God King would probably be suppressed by it. Bufong was forced to retreat. As a demigod, Bufong could feel the terrible pressure from the Crown Prince. However, Bufong was not in a hurry. He stared at the Crown Prince with a straight face. The Crown Prince was extremely crazy. He threw punch after punch, not giving Bufong a chance to catch his breath. Swoosh! Cracks appeared in the void. The last punch burst into a dazzling light as it smashed down. He was going to kill Bufong with this punch. Die! The Crown Prince said coldly. Bam! Bufong stepped into the void, his eyes shining brightly. Now was the time. Waves surged in Bu Fong's spirit sea. The true form of his divine sense opened its eyes. He mobilized all the power in his body. Rumble, with a creak, the divine flame surged on Bu Fong's Taotai arm. The invisible divine flame wrapped around it. He waved his fist and collided with the Crown Prince's punch that had reached its peak. Bam! 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 The void around the two of them exploded. Everyone sucked in a cold breath, marveling at the Crown Prince's strength. They were shocked to find that Bu Fong was stubborn. Bu Fong had chosen to meet the strongest punch of the Emperor Fist head-on. Was he a fool? Everyone thought that Bu Fong was a fool. The turbulence in the void dissipated. However, in the midst of the crowd's incredulous uproar, the Crown Prince retreated. The Crown Prince, who had suppressed Bu Fong with 80 punches like a storm, retreated after the last punch. Thump! 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 The Crown Prince retreated several steps in a row. With each step, the void exploded. Bu Fong was as still as a mountain. Silver flames were burning on his Taotai arm. In the flames, there was the power of the law surging. How was this possible? The Imperial Prince was astonished. He was actually forced back when his aura was at its strongest. This feeling was as uncomfortable as having a fly in a bowl of porridge. It was as aggrieved as when Gao Chao was interrupted. The Crown Prince stared at Bu Fong, Bu Fong's expressionless face, and took a deep breath. This guy did it on purpose. Bu Fong shook his Taotai arm. After withstanding the Crown Prince's 81 punches, Bu Fong felt that his fist was a little numb. He had to admit that the Crown Prince was really strong. If his Taotai arm hadn't mutated, he might have been defeated long ago. You're very scheming. The Crown Prince calmed himself down. He knew that his state of mind couldn't be disturbed by Bu Fong. That guy did it on purpose. Buzz, the golden longbow, appeared again. You're indeed stronger than those good-for-nothing young masters. You deserve more tricks from me, the Crown Prince said. At this moment, he showed his arrogance to the fullest. This was the emotion that a Crown Prince should have. Down below, the Crown Prince's words made the young masters' faces turn red, and they felt very aggrieved. But what could they say? None of them could withstand the Crown Prince's punch alone. Buzz, the Crown Prince drew his bow. Light gathered. 1, 2, 3. 3 golden arrows appeared in the air. Let's see how many you can block, the Crown Prince roared. Above his head, the law of space spread and surged as if it were about to boil. Swish! 3 arrows tore through the sky. The law of space wrapped around them. They disappeared into thin air in an instant. Everyone widened their eyes in shock. Summer crossed her arms in front of her chest, propping up her breasts. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and she twitched her mouth. Obviously, she, who had comprehended the law of space, saw through the Crown Prince's trick at a glance. Puff! Puff! The void behind Bu Fong's head exploded. An arrow shot out. Bu Fong slightly turned his head. Puff! However, as soon as Bu Fong turned his head, the void in front of him also exploded. A golden arrow shot out with a roar. The void under his feet exploded, and another arrow shot out. 3 arrows shot out from 3 directions, blocking all his escape routes. No matter which arrow he blocked, Bu Fong would be pierced by the other arrows. It's terrible, one of the young lords was shivering. If it were him, he wouldn't be able to block it at all. He would be shot into a sieve in an instant. However, under everyone's watchful eyes, Bu Fong's expression was the same as usual. Without the slightest change, he raised his eyes. The corners of his mouth twitched slightly. His mind flickered. A black wok appeared in front of him. The black wok spun. Clang! 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 The arrows stabbed the black wok. Even though they were extremely powerful, they couldn't break the black wok. They only made the sound of metal clashing. Raising his Taotai arm, Bu Fong flicked his fingers. He flicked away the arrow in front of him and looked indifferently at the Crown Prince. Is that all you've got? Boring. In the distant void, the Crown Prince, holding the longbow, narrowed his eyes. You can even block this. You really didn't let me down. No wonder you dared to anger my mother. The Crown Prince smiled faintly. "How about this move?" he asked. His voice exploded like thunder. The next moment, the longbow in his hand spun, grew bigger, and smashed into the void. The Crown Prince raised his foot and stepped on the bow. He pulled the bowstring with both hands. Buzz. Spatial arrow rain. The Crown Prince said. He loosened his grip. In an instant, countless arrow lights shot out densely. Puff! The void within an inch of Bufong exploded, and the arrows darted out of it, stabbing toward Bufong. In just a flash, everyone's pupils constricted. Bufong was shot into a sieve, and his body was covered with arrows, making him look like a hedgehog. Luo Sanyang let out a cry of alarm. The young masters all sucked in their breaths, trembling. Even Summer narrowed her eyes, feeling a little frightened. It was indeed a good idea to combine the law of space with the arrows. The corner of the imperial concubine's mouth curved upward, and a smile appeared on her beautiful face. Ear is really strong. That little beast is no match for Ear. Even a perfected god would be killed by the dragon shadow arrow at a distance of 1 inch, let alone Bufong. It was over. The battle was over. The Crown Prince let go of the longbow and sighed. Sure enough, no one could block this move of his. He had thought that Bufong could block a few moves, but now it seemed that he had overestimated him. Life was as lonely as snow. The Crown Prince sighed with emotion. Hey, have you had enough arrows? It's my turn. All of a sudden, a faint voice rang out through the void. The faces of the Crown Prince and the others froze. The arrows on Bufong, who had been stabbed like a hedgehog, suddenly burned. The silver flame was dazzling and dazzling. In a short while, the arrows disappeared. A figure was revealed. Among the figures, the law of transmigration swept out, and heaven and earth began to rumble. The law was compressed into Bufong's fist. Looking at the Crown Prince, Bufong threw out a punch. It's my turn when you've had enough arrows. The yin and yang transmigration fist. As soon as Bufong's voice rang out, the Crown Prince froze. By the time he came to his senses, the fist was already enlarging in his eyes. With a bang, Bufong's fist smashed into the Crown Prince's abdomen. The whole world fell silent. Chapter 1471. The Crown Prince was beaten. The entire world was silent. Everyone's eyes were wide open, and there was only shock left in them. They couldn't even think straight, and the only sound they could hear was the sound of gasping. What happened at the top of the building was like a clap of thunder, exploding in their hearts. In the next moment, everyone exclaimed in disbelief. Heavens! Unbelievable! The Crown Prince was beaten. The Crown Prince was beaten. Are my eyes deceiving me? How could he fight back like that? Whether it was the young masters or the heirs of the aristocratic families, they were all horrified. Although they were also called monstrous demigods, compared to the Crown Prince, they were like dust in the mortal world. The Crown Prince stood high above them, looking down at them. In the past decades, he had looked down on all the heroes, suppressing them with his power alone. The young masters still dared to resist. Every time the Crown Prince came out of seclusion, he would challenge him for his dream. However, it was one thing for the aristocratic family's heirs, but they couldn't withstand the might of the Emperor's son. But now, the Crown Prince was beaten. Looking at Bufong's punch on the Crown Prince's abdomen, the Crown Prince's eyes widened, and his disheveled hair lowered his head. Everyone felt a wave of horror. How is that possible? The imperial concubine's body trembled. She never thought that it would be beaten. That damned little bastard. The imperial concubine was mad with rage. Summer was also a little surprised. She didn't expect that Bufong could block it so easily. The Crown Prince himself was also shocked. He didn't even have time to react. Bufong twisted his fist, and the power of the law of transmigration rushed out. Even for Crown Prince, this punch was more than enough to deal with. Slash! The Crown Prince coughed out a mouthful of blood. His stagnant body flew backward, and the void was crushed. Boom! The air seemed to explode. The Crown Prince fell to his knees in midair, clutching his stomach with one hand and pressing the other against the void. He was vomiting there, and his hair was disheveled, which made him look extremely miserable. How many years had it been? How many years had it been since he, Xia Yi, felt such pain? The pain of his flesh being struck and the agony of his stomach churning caused Xia Yi's spirit to be shaken. He was the crown prince, a dignified crown prince, the son of the supreme divine emperor. Bufang stood there quietly. He held the black turtle constellation Wak in one hand. His face was indifferent. "I'm a prince. How dare you?" Bang! Bufang took a step forward, crossing thousands of miles and arriving in front of the crown prince. Then, he smashed the Wak onto the crown prince's face. There was a muffled bang. The crown prince stopped abruptly before he could finish his words. At this moment, the atmosphere suddenly froze. The crown prince's eyes widened, and his body trembled in disbelief. Humiliation, complete and utter humiliation. The young masters and heirs of the aristocratic families opened their mouths wide. The crown prince had been smashed by the Wak. A terrifying aura surged from the crown prince's body, causing the void to tremble as if it was about to shatter. "You've really angered me." The crown prince jerked his head up with a ferocious expression. Boom! The power of law swept out around him. With a bang, a terrible force blasted out. The crown prince clutched his stomach with one hand and raised his other hand, pointing it at Bufang. Bufang focused his eyes and moved. The void in front of Bufang was twisting and collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye. This was the use of the law of space. The crown prince wanted to crush Bufang with the collapsing space. Of course, that was impossible. However, the crown prince had also forced Bufang back. The crown prince stood up like a giant dragon that had just woken up. A terrifying aura emanated from him, causing everyone to tremble. "You really deserve to die. Damn you." The crown prince suppressed his voice. The wheel of law kept surging. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he, the crown prince of the divine dynasty, was punched in the stomach by a chef and hit in the head with a black Wak. This was an insult, a complete and utter humiliation. Only by cutting Bufang into 1,000 pieces could he vent the hatred in his heart. Since the beginning of his career, he had never suffered such humiliation. Fight! The law of space. The crown prince's eyes were clear. The extreme anger made him calmer. Over his head, a waterfall of law fell and surged over his body. With the supreme law of the universe around him, the crown prince's temperament was completely different. Buzz, the crown prince, took a step forward and stepped into the void. At this moment, the battlefield Summer had built was torn apart. Oh, Summer froze slightly. Although the crown prince's use of the law of space was not as good as hers, she could feel that his law of space was mainly developing in the direction of destruction. It was very violent. Bam! The void in front of Bufang exploded. The crown prince took a step forward. The Emperor Fist punched out. This time, the Emperor Fist was completely different. With the help of the law of space, its power had doubled. Bufang tried to block it, but he was knocked flying backward. "I'll use my fist to smash you into pieces," the crown prince said. He stepped into the void again, and when he reappeared, he was in front of Bufang. He threw a punch at the crown prince's head. Bufang's face was expressionless. The law of transmigration fell, and the yin and yang transmigration fist also shot out. Bam! The collision between the law of transmigration and the law of space caused the void to tremble. The void was constantly being torn apart. The crown prince retreated, and so did Bufang. Fists kept flying out, and the two of them fought in the void. The void completely collapsed, and turbulence surged above the building. This kind of terrifying aura caused everyone to be dumbfounded. No one had expected that Bufang could fight the crown prince to this extent. He had forced the crown prince to this extent. Perhaps this was the true strength of a monster demigod. Suddenly, some people were shocked. Bufang still has divine powers that he hasn't used yet. Are we really going to see the crown prince being defeated? Can we really see such an exciting thing in our lifetime? The young masters and the heirs of the aristocratic families were in an uproar. Hovering in midair, King Pingyong could not help but sigh with emotion as he watched the battle. The student surpasses the master. The youngsters nowadays are too monstrous. Unfortunately, this is an era of peace. If these young people were born in the era of war, our Shai divine dynasty might really be able to unify the chaotic universe. The Titan divine dynasty and the immortal spirit divine dynasty will all become the land of my Shai divine dynasty. King Pingyong sighed. What a pity. Now that the divine emperor was old and the Shai divine dynasty was in chaos, it was no longer as strong as it was when it conquered the chaotic universe. Clenching his fists, the young master felt his blood boiling. It turned out that Mr. Boo was so strong. Bang! Bang! Their fists collided, causing the void to tremble. The Crown Prince's aura was like a dragon, roaring into the 9 heavens. The top of the building was collapsing continuously. The two stood facing each other. This battle was unprecedentedly intense. You're not bad. He can actually fight with me to this extent. Unfortunately, the gap between you and I will never be able to bridge it, the Crown Prince said. His eyes were clear. The next moment, he took a deep breath. With a thought in his mind, the void was torn apart. Then, he reached out his hand and stuck it into the rift. Slowly, he pulled out. The clanging of weapons and the clanging of horses rang out. It caused the air to rumble and tremble. Golden light burst forth, and then the shadow of a dragon soared into the sky. Oh! Everyone froze. Then, they sucked in their breaths and came to a realization. The reason why the Crown Prince was called the Crown Prince was that he had comprehended 2 supreme laws of the universe. This was the most amazing thing about him. If one supreme law of the universe could already provide such a huge boost, what about 2 supreme laws? How amazing was the Crown Prince's talent? At this moment, everyone understood what was going on. The Crown Prince was finally going to use the 2nd supreme law of the universe. As soon as the 2 supreme laws of the universe appeared, how could Bufong fight against them? It was like one person fighting against 2 Crown Princes. Besides, the Crown Prince who had comprehended 2 supreme laws of the universe was not as simple as 1 + 1. It was absolutely terrifying. It was a knife. A blade was pulled out of thin air. It was a dragon knife. It was unknown what material the golden dragon knife was made of, but one could see that it was full of an ancient aura. It was a knife with a story. When everyone saw the knife, their faces were filled with shock and astonishment. When the imperial concubine saw this, she burst out laughing. She laughed so hard that tears were about to come out of her eyes. Under the building, the 5th prince stared at the knife in the Crown Prince's hand. His eyes were so bloodshot that they were about to pop out. Why? It's not fair. With a thud, the 5th prince knelt on the ground. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets as he cried hoarsely. He was resentful. He was unwilling. He felt like he was a clown. The divine artifact of the dynasty. The ultimate Emperor Dragon's soul knife. The divine emperor's personal knife. The Crown Prince holding this knife meant that the divine emperor had recognized him as the next divine emperor's heir. This meant that the 5th prince had no chance at all, no matter how hard he tried. The 5th prince's eyes were filled with tears. He was unwilling. The picture of his mother appeared in his mind. His mother had once pinned her hopes on him. Unfortunately, she was dead. She was killed by the imperial concubine. If he wanted revenge, he could only ascend to the throne. But everything was gone now. The old man sighed. The 5th prince was also a pitiful man. Unfortunately, he was a little stupid. From the beginning, he was not on the same level as the Crown Prince. The other princes had given up, but the 5th prince was still stupid enough to fight for the throne. What did he have to fight for it? The Crown Prince became more and more dignified. Behind him, the shadow of a golden dragon emerged. It was a golden dragon made of gold. Bufong narrowed his eyes. Facing the Crown Prince at this moment, Bufong felt as if he was facing the divine emperor he had met before. I won't use this knife easily. Since I've used it, I will definitely kill you, the Crown Prince said. Said the Crown Prince. His voice had become indifferent. He was high and mighty. Buzz, all of a sudden, the Crown Prince's eyes burst into divine light, and his aura rose steadily and rushed into the sky. You should be content to die under this knife and my second supreme law of the universe. Rumble. The wind and clouds above the Crown Prince's head changed. The void crumbled. Another law was born in the Wheel of Law. It was restless and terrifying, with an aura that could destroy everything. The law of destruction, the Crown Prince said coldly, grinning. Buzz, a dragon roar rang out. The Crown Prince held the knife with both hands and infused the power of the law into the dragon's soul knife. Dazzling light bloomed from the knife. The void kept exploding under the knife. Summer sucked in a cold breath. She could not believe that her brother had given the knife to the Crown Prince. With this knife, how could Bufong fight? Two supreme laws of the universe and the dragon soul knife. The Crown Prince was simply cheating. Bufong would definitely be crushed. The dragon soul knife was one of the divine artifacts of the dynasty, symbolizing the divine emperor. Once it was unleashed, everything would be destroyed. How could he fight? Was Bufong going to die? Luo Sanyang, Yu, young Master Pingyang, and the others all turned pale. Looking at the Crown Prince, who was bursting with invincible power, there was only despair left in them. How could such a Crown Prince resist? Rumble. A knife light came slashing through the void. The law of destruction and the law of space had almost doubled the destructive power. Even some weaker godly king experts would feel their hearts palpitating at this moment. Looking at this scene, under everyone's gaze, the corners of Bufong's mouth suddenly curled up. The dragon knife. What a coincidence. I have one too, Bufong said lightly. As soon as he finished speaking, a dragon's roar suddenly rang out. It soared into the sky in an instant. Chapter 1472. What a coincidence! How is it a coincidence? Hearing Bufong's words, the people present were somewhat dumbfounded and speechless. However, some people seemed to recall that Bufong had a golden kitchen knife in his hand. It seemed to be the dragon bone knife. Therefore, the dragon bone kitchen knife was also called the dragon knife, right? Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They only felt that Bufong was joking. Perhaps he wanted to take advantage of them with words. The dragon soul knife was the divine emperor's personal weapon and one of the divine artifacts of the Xiai divine dynasty. It was very precious, and the material used to make it was a rare mineral in the starry sky. Furthermore, the most important thing was that the treasured saber also contained the dragon soul of the ancient five-clawed golden dragon. It was said that the dragon soul belonged to the dragon clan's patriarch. The Dragon Valley in the starry sky had always wanted to take away the extreme Emperor Dragon Soul Blade in order to release the dragon soul within. Unfortunately, in the past millions of years, he had never succeeded. The extreme monarch Dragon Soul Saber, on the other hand, had been nourished by generations of divine emperors. It had already developed a monstrous intelligence. To the user, it was extremely terrifying. Two supreme laws of the universe swirled above the Crown Prince's head, causing his aura to become extremely terrifying. The two supreme laws of the universe, coupled with the ultimate Emperor Dragon Soul Saber support, made the attack even more terrifying. With a slash of the saber, all living things were annihilated. Facing the Thearcha's saber, the terrifying saber light covered the sky. The whole capital of the divine dynasty seemed to be shivering under the blade. Space was constantly being torn apart by this saber strike. The Crown Prince had unleashed this slash with the power of two laws. Although he hadn't fused the laws into it, its power was close to that of a God King. No wonder the Crown Prince dared to come again after learning that Bufong had killed Silver Armor, the Divine King. It turned out that with the dragon saber in hand and two supreme laws of the universe, ordinary God Kings might not be the Thearcha's son's match. A dragon roar rang out from Bufong's body. His words fell. Bufang's hand shone with thousands of golden lights. A golden divine dragon seemed to be hovering around Bufang's body. This scene caused the surrounding people to be slightly shocked. A golden kitchen knife appeared in Bufang's hand. The dragon bone kitchen knife was glowing, bursting with endless power. Humph! This little bastard actually wants to use a kitchen knife to clash with Eir's dragon saber. Ridiculous! The imperial concubine stood in the phoenix carriage with a disdainful look on her face. The horror of the dragon knife was not what this little chef could imagine. A dragon knife could suppress the ages because it was the divine artifact of the Xiai divine dynasty. Summer's expression became much more serious. She didn't expect that the divine emperor would actually give the dragon saber to the crown prince. He was already training the crown prince as his successor. However, this was normal. The crown prince's talent was unprecedented, and he had comprehended two supreme laws of the universe. He had a chance of becoming a heavenly god. Such an existence would certainly be the first choice of the Xiai divine dynasty's future heir. As the saber slashed across, the void space shattered continuously as a terrifying roar engulfed everything. In Bufang's eyes, the saber radiance grew bigger and bigger and became illusory. There was indifference and condescension in the crown prince's eyes. It was as if at this moment, he was the divine emperor who controlled the life and death of billions of people. With the dragon saber in hand, "What are you going to use to fight me?" The crown prince's indifferent voice rang through the skies. The whole capital was silent, and everyone was speechless. With the dragon soul saber in his hand, the crown prince looked like he was cheating. How was he going to fight? Was Bufang going to use his kitchen knife to fight the dragon soul knife? In an instant, the kitchen knife would be sliced in half by the extreme Emperor Dragon Soul Knife. The young masters were all shaking their heads. The outcome had been decided, and there was no suspense. Bufang held the dragon bone kitchen knife. As the terrible knife energy spread, the vermilion robe he wore flapped noisily. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand was even trembling slightly. The dragon bone kitchen knife, which had accompanied him since the Light Wind Empire, was trembling now. It was not trembling with fear. It was excitement. That's right, excitement. Bufang glanced over his shoulder at the dragon bone kitchen knife and breathed a soft sigh of relief. Can you be a little more reserved? But in that case, I'll make you more excited, Bufang said. The next moment, his aura changed. Boom! There seemed to be knife energy shooting out of Bufang's eyes, which completely cut the void into nothingness. The crown prince's knife kept approaching. Boom! He held the dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand, then raised it up. The knife seemed to tear the sky apart as it slashed down. The void was collapsing. The kitchen knife of affliction, Bufang said lightly. The dragon bone kitchen knife slashed out with a blade light that covered the sky. Along with it, there was also a long, winding, golden dragon. Under the watchful eyes of all, the two saber lights collided. Boom! A terrible rumble swept out in an instant. At this moment, the building of the divine chef temple completely collapsed. Summer's expression changed. She flipped her hand. At the top of the divine chef temple, a folded space spread and devoured the terrible destructive energy of the knife light. Rumble. The two knife lights collided in midair. It was a clash of power. Everyone was dumbfounded. Looking at the knife lights that were in a stalemate, they felt incredulous. They were in a stalemate? The extreme King Dragon Soul Blade's slash had been blocked. It was a knife that could even wound a god king. When did Bufang become so strong? Even if he comprehended a supreme law of the universe, he shouldn't be so strong. Before this, Bufang had no power to resist silver armor at all. If he hadn't burst out at the last moment, he might have been killed by silver armor. Could it be that Bufang could still use the same trick he used against silver armor? Was he so heaven-defying? Bam! Bam! The void was dying and slowly dissipating. Their knife lights seemed to be melting each other. The crown prince's figure emerged. Bufang's figure emerged as well. They looked at each other. A divine power? No wonder you can block my knife. The crown prince exhaled. However, his voice was still full of confidence. But how many times can you use that divine power? The crown prince sneered. The next moment, he disappeared from where he was. Exerting the law of space, the crown prince traveled through the void and disappeared. When he reappeared, he was in front of Bu Fong. He waved the dragon's soul knife. The golden knife light made everyone present feel a chill run down their spines. If the incomparably sharp dragon soul knife, which could cut through anything, slashed down, everything would be cut to pieces. Bu Fong glanced at it. The dragon bone kitchen knife twirled in his hand and swept out. It collided with the dragon soul blade. Hiss! Is he stupid? The people present all thought that Bu Fong was stupid. Was he going to fight the real one with a fake dragon knife? This kitchen knife would probably be cut open like tofu. At that time, Bu Fong would also be cut in half, and his blood would splash across the sky. You're overestimating yourself. The crown prince's eyes burst with bright light. The power in his hand exploded again. The law of destruction covered the dragon soul knife, making its destructive power even more terrible. Bu Fong's face was indifferent. Everyone thought he was stupid. But was Bu Fong really stupid? He had confidence in the dragon bone kitchen knife. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the dragon bone kitchen knife and the dragon soul knife collided, making a crisp sound. A clanging sound rang out. Sparks flew everywhere. There seemed to be a terrible flame sweeping around them, which was comparable to the divine flame. The void was destroyed, constantly twisting as it was burned. Dragon shadows could be seen coiling in the air between the two dragon knives. They collided and bit each other in the void. The crown prince's eyes shrank. How is this possible? Not only the crown prince, but also the surrounding onlookers sucked in their breaths. They felt that their worldview had been refreshed. Could it be that the crown prince was holding a fake dragon soul knife? Even a kitchen knife couldn't cut it? How could it be called a divine artifact of the dynasty? The knives kept colliding, sending sparks everywhere. Holding the kitchen knife, Bu Fong kept using the kitchen knife of affliction to clash with the crown prince's knife technique. They were fighting fearlessly. Their attacks were so sharp that every time they collided, the surroundings would be torn apart. The void around them exploded. The scale of this battle had completely exceeded everyone's expectations. If this was a battle between god kings, some people would believe it. But who would have known that this was just a collision between two demigods? Rip! The two knives separated. The crown prince's pupils constricted, and his eyes were filled with disbelief. Where did this guy come from? The kitchen knife in his hand is definitely not an ordinary item. Bu Fong glanced at the dragon bone kitchen knife. He could feel its excitement. In his spirit's sea, the golden divine dragon was roaring. The crown prince calmed down. He looked coldly at Bu Fong. How dare a mere kitchen knife compete with the dragon soul knife? I'll definitely kill you this time. The crown prince didn't want to delay any longer. He seemed to have a bad feeling in his heart. It made all the hair on his body stand on end. Buzz, the law of destruction fell, turned into a waterfall, and wrapped around the dragon soul knife in his hand. The crown prince's aura grew stronger and stronger. Just by standing there, the void seemed to be unable to bear it. The law of space also wrapped around the knife. The two laws entangled with each other, emanating a terrible aura that shook heaven and earth. Buzz the crown prince roared. His roar seemed to soar into the sky, shatter the sky, and bring down the stars. The crown prince's figure became blurry. I admit that you're a strong chef. You're the first person who can force me to this extent. The crown prince's eyes stared at the crown prince as the power of the law spread. Unfortunately, you've only comprehended one supreme law of the universe. You'll never know what it means to comprehend two supreme laws of the universe. The crown prince's figure became blurry. An aura of destruction spread. The destructive power that erupted out was earth-shattering. The imperial concubine's eyes shone brightly, and her body trembled with excitement. Two supreme laws of the universe. An unprecedented existence. This is the real horror. This is my son. He's destined to become a god emperor. The imperial concubine was very excited. Down below, the young masters felt sad. At this moment, the crown prince made them kneel willingly. Two supreme laws of the universe. How terrifying! King Pingyong sighed. His eyes were filled with amazement as he looked at the crown prince. The fifth prince looked like he had gone mad. He seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. Xiaochen seemed to be deep in thought and sighed. This nephew of hers is really a monster. The crown prince's figure became blurry. He held the dragon knife with one hand. Around the dragon saber, the void continued to collapse. The next moment, the crown prince walked slowly. He took one step at a time, neither too fast nor too slow. But behind him, numerous afterimages appeared. The two supreme laws of the universe turned into ribbons and fell, wrapping him up. At this moment, the crown prince looked like a fiend god who had walked out of the chaos. He took one step at a time, like a devil. He approached Bufang, sneering and proud. He looked down on everything, high and mighty. In the Xiaoyi divine dynasty, his talent would surely crush everything. Even in the chaotic universe, he would look down on all the heroes. The two supreme laws of the universe gave him infinite confidence. Then he slashed at Bufang. It was neither too fast nor too slow. As the knife moved, thousands of knife shadows followed. The two supreme laws of space and destruction burst out with infinite power. I am a crown prince, the invincible crown prince. The crown prince roared. His eyes were deep as he stared at Bufang. You chef, who do you think you are? How dare you stop me? With one slash, heaven and earth were destroyed. Sensing the terrifying aura emanating from the crown prince, Bufang exhaled softly. The next moment, he raised the dragon bone kitchen knife. Facing the crown prince's slash, which had fused two supreme laws, Bufang blocked it with his kitchen knife. The sound of a collision rang out. Everything was silent. And what a coincidence! Two supreme laws of the universe. I have them too. In the silence, Bufang's voice rang out as if he was holding back his laughter. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.